Story 1. At 2:13 a.m. on a freezing February night, the Emergency Dispatch Center in Cedar Hollow received a call that would later be replayed thousands of times by investigators, journalists, and eventually the entire country. The recording began with silence, then breathing, slow, uneven, and trembling. "Hello," the dispatcher asked calmly. 911, what's your emergency? For 7 seconds, there was no reply. Just faint static and the sound of wind scraping against glass. Then a whisper. "He's still here." The dispatcher straightened in her chair. "Ma'am, who is still there? Can you tell me your location?" Another pause. A shaky inhale. "Room 307, Cedar Hollow Inn." The dispatcher quickly typed the location. Cedar Hollow Inn was a small roadside motel just outside town limits. Cheap rooms, long-term tenants. The kind of place where people stayed when they had nowhere else to go. "Okay," the dispatcher said, her voice steady. "Are you in danger right now?" There was a muffled sound, like something scraping across carpet. "Yes," the woman whispered. "He said he'd wait until morning, but I think he changed his mind." The dispatcher felt a chill crawl across her arms. "What's your name?" she asked gently. But the line went dead. By 2:16 a.m., Cedar Hollow Police Officer Daniel Reyes was pulling into the motel parking lot, red and blue lights slicing through the darkness. Snow crunched under his tires as he parked directly in front of room 307. The motel looked exactly like he remembered. Flickering neon sign, cracked asphalt, rows of identical doors painted a dull brown that peeled like sunburned skin. The manager, a nervous man named Frank Lillard, stood outside the office in pajama pants and a thick coat, shivering despite the layers. "They called you already?" Frank asked as Officer Reyes stepped out of his cruiser. "Yes. Did you hear anything from room 307? Frank shook his head rapidly. "No. Haven't rented that room in 3 days. Not since, you know." Reyes froze. "Since what?" Frank swallowed. "The last tenant checked out. Or at least, I think she did." Reyes approached room 307 cautiously. The outdoor hallway lights buzzed overhead, casting a sick yellow glow across the frost-covered railing. He rested his hand on his holster and knocked firmly. "Cedar Hollow Police Department. Is anyone inside?" Silence. He knocked again. Harder. "Ma'am, if you're inside, we're here to help." Still nothing. Reyes glanced at the window. The curtains were drawn tightly shut, but faint light glowed behind them. He tried the doorknob. Unlocked. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a narrow motel room filled with stale air and the faint smell of mildew, and something else. Copper. Blood. The first thing Reyes noticed was the phone. It lay on the carpet near the bed, its screen cracked, still faintly glowing. The second thing he noticed was the suitcase. It sat neatly on the luggage rack, zipped shut as if someone had just arrived. And then he saw her. She lay beside the bed, one arm stretched toward the phone, fingers frozen mid-reach. Her eyes stared blankly toward the ceiling, her mouth slightly open as if her final breath had been interrupted. Blood pooled beneath her shoulder, dark and glossy against the motel's faded floral carpet. Reyes immediately called it in. "Dispatch, we have a confirmed fatality." He stepped deeper into the room, scanning for signs of forced entry. There were none. The window was locked. The chain latch on the door hung loosely and used. And there were no signs of a struggle. It looked almost peaceful, except for the single deep wound just below her collarbone. The victim was identified later that morning as Emily Carter, 28 years old, originally from Brookhaven, nearly 200 miles away. She had checked into Cedar Hollow in 4 days earlier alone. According to the motel registry, she paid cash for a week's stay. She never checked out. Detective Laura Hastings arrived at the scene just after sunrise. She had been with Cedar Hollow PD for 12 years and had seen more than her share of homicides. But something about this case immediately unsettled her. Maybe it was the room itself. It was too organized. Emily's clothes were folded neatly inside dresser drawers. Her toiletries lined the bathroom sink with precise alignment. Even her shoes were placed side by side beneath the desk. Victims rarely left rooms that orderly before violent deaths. Hastings crouched beside the body while forensic techs worked around her. "Time of death?" she asked. "Rough estimate," the medical examiner replied. "Between midnight and 1:30 a.m. Hastings frowned. The 911 call came at 2:13. The examiner nodded slowly. That's what dispatch told us. A heavy silence fell between them. Hastings picked up the phone from the evidence bag once it was cleared. The cracked screen flickered to life when she pressed the power button. Call history displayed one outgoing call. 9/11, 2:13 a.m. No other recent calls. No texts. No messages. She scrolled through Emily's contacts. Most were generic names. Mom, Dad, work, Sarah. But one contact caught her attention. It was saved as "Do not answer." Hastings tapped it. No phone number appeared. Just a blank entry. Later that afternoon, Hastings interviewed motel manager Frank Lillard in his cramped office. Frank twisted his hands nervously as he spoke. She seemed normal, he insisted. Quiet. Polite. Paid on time. Stayed mostly in her room. Did she have visitors? Hastings asked. Frank hesitated. Well, maybe. Hastings leaned forward. Maybe? I saw someone outside her room 2 nights ago, he admitted. Tall guy, wearing one of those heavy winter coats with the hood up. I thought he was just another guest. Did you see his face? Frank shook his head. No, but he stood there for a long time, just staring at her door. Surveillance cameras at the motel were notoriously unreliable. Half of them didn't work at all, and the ones that did produced grainy, time-stamped footage that looked like it belonged in 1998. But Hastings insisted on reviewing everything. Hours later, she finally found it. Camera 4 covering the east hallway. At 11:42 p.m., Emily Carter appeared outside room 307. She was carrying a small plastic bag from the motel vending machine. She unlocked her door and stepped inside. 30 seconds later, the hallway went empty. At 12:06 a.m., a figure entered the frame. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark hooded parka. He walked slowly down the hallway until he reached room 307. And then he stopped. He didn't knock. He didn't move. He just stood there facing her door for nearly 4 minutes. Then he turned and walked out of frame. Hastings leaned closer to the screen. Is that it? She asked the technician. No, he said quietly. There's more. He fast-forwarded the footage. At 1:58 a.m., the hallway camera flickered with static. When the image stabilized, the same figure stood outside room 307 again. But this time, he was closer to the door. Much closer. So close that his shadow stretched across it like a black stain. Hastings felt her stomach tighten. Did he enter? She asked. The technician rewound, zoomed in, enhanced contrast. The footage was barely clear enough, but one detail stood out. The doorknob turned slightly. Then the door opened, just a few inches. The figure slipped inside. The timestamp read, 1:59 a.m. Hastings checked the next clip. There was no footage of him leaving. By evening, the case had already begun attracting attention across Cedar Hollow. A young woman murdered in a roadside motel was disturbing enough, but the missing suspect made it worse. Still, Hastings couldn't shake one specific detail. If the suspect entered at 1:59 a.m. and Emily died shortly after, then who made the 2:13 a.m. call? The autopsy the next morning only deepened the mystery. Emily Carter had died from a single, precise stab wound delivered with surgical accuracy. The blade had pierced her heart almost instantly. There were no defensive wounds, no bruises, no signs she fought back. Toxicology revealed no drugs or alcohol in her system. But there was something else. Under her fingernails, the lab found traces of old, dried blood. Not her blood, someone else's. When Hastings called Emily's parents in Brookhaven, their grief quickly turned into confusion. She wasn't supposed to be there, her mother said through tears. What do you mean? Hastings asked. She told us she was staying with a friend. She never mentioned Cedar Hollow. Did she mention anyone she was afraid of? A long silence followed. Finally, her father spoke. She quit her job 3 weeks ago, packed her things, and left in the middle of the night. Why? She said someone had been calling her. Over and over. From blocked numbers. Hastings glanced at Emily's phone sitting on her desk. Did she say who it was? Her father's voice trembled. She said it was someone she already buried. That evening, Hastings sat alone in her office replaying the 911 call for the 10th time. The whisper, the fear, the final words. He's still here. But this time, Hastings noticed something new. Right before the call disconnected, there was a faint background sound, barely audible. She enhanced the audio repeatedly, slowed it down, isolated the frequencies, and finally she heard it clearly. A second voice, deep, calm, almost amused. It spoke only 3 words. Words so quiet they nearly vanished beneath the static. You called them? Hastings leaned back in her chair, her pulse hammering in her ears. Because according to the autopsy, Emily Carter was already dead when that call was placed. And somewhere in Cedar Hollow, someone else had been standing in room 307, holding her phone, listening to the dispatcher, waiting. Detective Laura Hastings didn't sleep that night. The recording looped through her mind like a broken alarm she couldn't shut off. The whisper, the breathing, and most disturbing of all, the second voice buried beneath the static. You called them? By sunrise, Hastings was already back at Cedar Hollow Inn. Frost coated the railings again, and the same flickering neon sign buzzed overhead like it hadn't rested since the murder. Crime scene tape still wrapped around room 307, snapping lightly in the wind. Officer Reyes stood guard near the door, sipping lukewarm coffee from a paper cup. You're early, he said. I never left the case, Hastings replied. Reyes nodded toward the room. Forensics finished overnight. They cleared most of it, but, he hesitated, they found something else. Inside, the motel room looked emptier than before, stripped of the body and most evidence markers. But the silence felt heavier now, like the room itself was holding its breath. Reyes pointed toward the bathroom. They missed it during the initial sweep, he said. Hastings stepped inside the tiny bathroom, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead. The mirror was fogged with condensation stains, and the sink had been wiped clean except for faint chemical streaks left behind by forensic testing. Reyes crouched beside the bathtub and pulled back the shower curtain. There, he said, on the inside wall of the tub, barely visible beneath dried soap residue, were 3 words written with a finger. Still here waiting. Hastings stared at it, her pulse slowing into a steady, uneasy rhythm. Blood, she asked. Reyes shook his head. Preliminary tests say no. Just water residue and skin oil. Whoever wrote it used a wet finger. Hastings leaned closer. Any idea when it was written? Not yet. She stepped back slowly, absorbing the message. Still here waiting. It didn't feel like a threat. It felt like a promise. Back at the station, Hastings gathered everything they knew about Emily Carter. 28. Former dental assistant. No criminal record. No history of violence. No documented enemies. But her final 3 weeks painted a different picture. She'd abruptly resigned from her job without explanation, closed her bank account, sold her car for cash, then vanished from Brookhaven entirely. Her phone records revealed dozens of missed calls from blocked numbers. Most lasted only a few seconds, but one call stood out. 2 weeks before her death, she answered. The conversation lasted exactly 9 minutes and 23 seconds. Hastings requested the recording from the cellular provider. When it arrived, she listened alone. The call began with silence. Then Emily's voice, shaky but firm. I told you not to call again. A male voice responded. Smooth, calm, almost comforting. You didn't finish our conversation. There is no conversation, Emily snapped. You're supposed to be gone. A soft chuckle echoed through the recording. Emily, you know I don't leave things unfinished. The recording cut off abruptly after Emily shouted. You died. Hastings replayed the final seconds several times. Each time, her stomach twisted tighter. Later that afternoon, Hastings and Reyes drove to Brookhaven to speak with Emily's former co-worker and closest friend, Sarah Donnelly. Sarah lived in a small apartment above a bakery that smelled faintly of cinnamon and burnt sugar. She opened the door with red-rimmed eyes and trembling hands. I knew you'd come eventually, she said. Inside, Sarah clutched a mug of tea but never drank it. She was terrified, Sarah admitted quietly. Not anxious, not stressed, terrified. Of who? Hastings asked. Sarah swallowed. Of someone named Victor. Hastings exchanged a glance with Reyes. Victor who? She asked. I don't know, Sarah said. She never told me his last name. But she said he used to be her patient when she worked at the dental clinic. Used to be? Reyes asked. Sarah nodded slowly. He died last year. According to clinic records, Victor Hale, age 36, had been a regular patient for nearly 2 years. 1 year ago, Victor Hale died in a house fire. The fire had been ruled accidental. Victor's body was found inside his home, burned beyond recognition, but identified through dental records ironically completed by Emily Carter herself. Hastings stared at Victor Hale's file late that night. There was something unsettling about his photograph. He had soft features, gentle eyes, and a faint smile that looked harmless, almost kind. But Hastings had worked enough homicide cases to know appearances meant nothing. Victor's background was nearly spotless. No arrests, no violent history, except for one sealed psychological evaluation ordered 6 months before his death. Hastings filed a court request to unseal it. By morning, she had permission. The evaluation revealed Victor had been under psychiatric observation after co-workers reported disturbing behavior. He had developed an obsessive attachment to a female healthcare provider he refused to name. The report described escalating delusions. Victor believed he and the woman were in a relationship, one she was afraid to admit publicly. The final note from his psychiatrist chilled Hastings the most. Patient expresses belief that death is not a barrier to emotional continuity. States he will wait as long as necessary for the subject. Hastings leaned back in her chair, staring at the words. Still here waiting. The next discovery came from Victor Hale's fire investigation report. The blaze had destroyed most of his house, but investigators recovered one partially burned notebook. Most pages were unreadable, but one entry survived. It contained a single sentence written repeatedly across the page in frantic handwriting. If she won't stay with me alive, she'll stay with me after. Reyes rubbed his temples as Hastings shared the findings. Okay, he said slowly. This guy was clearly unstable. But he died, confirmed by dental records. How is he connected to Emily's murder now? Hastings didn't answer immediately, because she didn't have one. 2 days later, forensic lab results returned from the blood found under Emily's fingernails. DNA matched Victor Hale. Reyes stared at the report like it might change if he blinked. That's impossible, he said quietly. He died a year ago, Hastings replied. Exactly. They pulled Victor's death file again, combing through every detail of the fire. And that's when they found it. Victor's body had been identified solely through dental comparison. But the fire had been so intense that only partial remains were recovered. There was no DNA confirmation, no fingerprints, just teeth. Teeth Emily herself had treated, documented, and verified. Hastings felt a cold realization begin to form. What if, she started slowly, Victor Hale never died in that fire? Reyes stared at her. You're saying he staged his own death? It's possible, Hastings said, especially if he knew Emily was the one verifying his dental records. Reyes exhaled sharply. If that's true, he's been planning this for a year. That evening, Hastings returned to the motel one more time, unable to shake the feeling that something about room 307 still hadn't been uncovered. The sun was setting, painting the sky in dull orange streaks as she stepped inside the now empty room. The carpet had been partially removed, the mattress gone. The room echoed hollowly with each step. She stood in the center of the space, replaying the timeline in her mind. Victor fakes his death, obsesses over Emily, finds her again in Cedar Hollow, kills her, makes the 911 call. But why call police at all? The question gnawed at her. Then she noticed something strange. Near the air vent beneath the window, the carpet padding had been sliced open during evidence removal. Inside the padding, she saw something metallic. Hastings knelt and carefully pulled it free. It was a small digital voice recorder, still powered on, still recording. Her hands trembled as she pressed play. Static crackled, followed by muffled movement sounds. Then Emily's voice filled the tiny speaker. Victor, please, you need help. Another voice answered softly, intimately. I told you, Emily. I don't need help. I just need you. There was a sudden scuffle, a gasp, and a dull thud. Emily's breathing turned ragged. Why are you doing this? She whispered weakly. A pause followed. Then Victor spoke again. Because you left me in that fire. Hastings felt her chest tighten. Emily's voice cracked. You set that fire yourself. You said you were starting over. Another pause. Then Victor whispered the words that would haunt investigators for years. I did start over. The recorder captured footsteps, the creak of the motel door, and then silence. But the recording didn't stop. Minutes passed. Then a new sound emerged. Footsteps returning, a phone unlocking, and Victor's voice again, colder now, distant. You shouldn't have called them. Hastings turned off the recorder, her hands shaking, because the timestamp on the device showed it was still recording 30 minutes after Emily's estimated time of death. And if Victor Hale had truly been standing in that room, then somewhere he was still alive, still waiting, and possibly already watching someone else. By the time Detective Laura Hastings finished listening to the voice recorder, the sun had already slipped below the Cedar Hollow skyline. The empty motel room felt colder now, not from the winter air leaking through the cracked window frame, but from the growing certainty settling in her chest. Victor Hale hadn't died in that fire. He had disappeared, and for a full year, he had been waiting. The next morning, Hastings reopened Victor Hale's death investigation with the intensity of someone racing against time. If Victor was alive, he wasn't just a suspect. He was a predator who had already proven he could erase himself from existence once before. She began with the fire scene report. Victor's house had burned on March 14th of the previous year, in a quiet suburban block on the edge of Brookhaven. The fire started in the basement and spread rapidly through the ventilation system, swallowing the house in less than 20 minutes. Firefighters recovered what they believed was Victor's body near the basement stairwell. But Hastings noticed something new when she reviewed the photos. The body had been found lying face down, arms stretched toward the staircase, as if trying to escape. Yet there were no burn patterns on the floor beneath the remains suggesting movement. It looked staged. Hastings and Reyes drove to Brookhaven again that afternoon, this time heading straight for Victor's old neighborhood. The house still stood barely. It had been boarded up and fenced off, condemned after the fire. The charred siding curled like blackened paper, and the windows remained sealed with weathered plywood. A faded, unsafe structure, notice hung crookedly on the front door. Reyes stared at the ruin as they approached. You really think he planned all this? He asked. I think he planned everything, Hastings replied. They obtained access through the fire department and stepped inside wearing protective masks. The smell of smoke still clung stubbornly to the interior, mixed with mold and rot. The living room was gutted. Furniture skeletons remained fused to the floor. The ceiling had collapsed in sections, leaving jagged holes where winter light spilled through. But Hastings wasn't interested in the main level. She headed straight for the basement stairs. The basement was where Victor's body had been discovered. Ash crunched beneath their boots as they descended carefully. The air grew colder with each step, and the darkness thickened until Reyes switched on his flashlight. The beam swept across scorched concrete walls and melted storage shelves. Hastings studied the crime scene photos on her tablet, comparing them to the current layout. Body was found here, she said, pointing to a darkened patch near the stairwell. Reyes nodded. That's what the report says. Hastings crouched low, scanning the floor. And then she saw it. A faint rectangular outline in the soot, like something heavy had been dragged across the ground. Reyes, she whispered. He stepped closer. What is it? Look at this. He aimed the flashlight downward. The drag marks led toward the back wall of the basement, where a large steel storage cabinet once stood. According to fire reports, the cabinet had collapsed during the blaze and been removed during debris clearing. But Hastings noticed something else. Behind where the cabinet had stood, the wall paint looked slightly different. Less burned, less blistered. She ran her gloved fingers along the surface. Hollow. Reyes grabbed a crowbar from the evidence kit, and together they pried at the weakened drywall. The panel cracked and gave way, revealing a narrow crawl space hidden between foundation beams. Inside was a tunnel, not a natural one, a constructed passage reinforced with wooden supports, leading deeper beneath the house and toward the backyard. Reyes stared into the darkness. You've got to be kidding me. Hastings shined her flashlight inside. The tunnel floor was lined with plastic sheeting, old but intact. He built himself an exit, she said quietly. They followed the tunnel carefully, crouching through the narrow space until it emerged behind the property, concealed beneath a rusted tool shed that had collapsed long ago. The exit opened into the wooded area bordering the neighborhood. If Victor had used this tunnel during the fire, he could have vanished into the forest without anyone noticing. Reyes exhaled slowly. That means the body in the basement. Wasn't him, Hastings finished. Forensic reanalysis began immediately. Investigators re-examined preserved bone fragments recovered from the fire. Advanced DNA testing revealed the truth within 48 hours. The remains belonged to a missing homeless man reported last seen 2 weeks before the fire. Victor Hale had murdered someone else, placed the body inside his house, and burned it to fake his own death. The realization hit Cedar Hollow police like a shockwave. Victor Hale wasn't just obsessive. He was methodical, patient, and now active again. Hastings turned her focus toward Victor's life before the fire. Financial records revealed he had quietly withdrawn nearly $40,000 in cash over 6 months prior to his supposed death. He had also purchased survival gear, prepaid phones, and camping equipment under multiple aliases. But the most disturbing discovery came from his online activity. Victor had spent months researching Cedar Hollow. Maps, motel layouts, police response times, weather patterns. He had chosen Cedar Hollow deliberately. 3 days later, a break came from an unexpected source. A gas station clerk 20 miles outside Cedar Hollow contacted police after seeing Victor's photo on the news. "I think he's been here," the clerk said. Security footage confirmed it. 2 nights before Emily's murder, a tall man matching Victor's build entered the station wearing a hooded coat. He paid cash for bottled water, disposable gloves, and a cheap burner phone. But the footage showed something else. As Victor exited the store, he paused briefly at the security camera and smiled. Hastings stared at the freeze frame. "That's not panic," Reyes said. "That's confidence," Hastings replied. Phone triangulation from the burner device revealed it had been activated near Cedar Hollow Inn for several days before the murder, and then again 2 nights after. The final signal pinged from a remote stretch of highway leading toward an abandoned mining district. Search teams deployed immediately. They combed the area for 48 hours, scanning abandoned buildings, caves, and forest clearings. Nothing. No Victor. No trace. It was as if he had stepped off the map entirely. Meanwhile, Hastings continued reviewing the voice recorder recovered from room 307. Forensic audio specialists enhanced background noise buried deep within the recording. And that's when they uncovered something chilling. During Victor's final moments in the room, faint radio chatter echoed beneath the conversation. Police scanner chatter. Victor had been listening to law enforcement frequencies while inside the motel, monitoring their movements, tracking their arrival times, staying 1 step ahead. Then another discovery surfaced. Under spectral audio analysis, technicians isolated faint humming beneath Victor's voice. At first, it sounded meaningless, but when slowed down and reversed, it formed a melody, a children's lullaby. Hastings froze when she heard it. She recognized the tune immediately. It was the same lullaby Emily's mother said she used to sing to her as a child. Hastings drove back to Brookhaven the next morning and played the audio for Emily's parents. Her mother collapsed into tears instantly. "That's it," she whispered. "That's her song. How would he know that?" Emily's father stared at the floor, pale and shaken. "Emily mentioned him once," he said quietly. "She said Victor asked strange questions during appointments. Personal questions. About her family, her childhood, her favorite memories." Victor hadn't just been stalking Emily. He had been studying her, learning her life detail by detail, until he could mimic pieces of it. The investigation reached a turning point that night when Hastings received a call from motel manager Frank Lillard. His voice trembled through the phone. "Detective, you need to come here." "What happened?" I think someone's back." Hastings arrived at Cedar Hollow in within minutes. Police cruisers surrounded the property, their lights painting the snow-covered parking lot in flashing red and blue. Frank stood outside room 307 again, pale and shaking. "We sealed this room," he said. "No one's supposed to be inside." Hastings approached the door slowly. The crime scene tape had been cut cleanly, as if sliced with a blade. She pushed the door open. The room was still empty, but the bathroom light was on. She stepped inside carefully, Reyes close behind. The shower curtain swayed gently, though no window was open. Hastings pulled it back. On the bathtub wall, the previous message had been wiped away, replaced with new words written in condensation across the mirror. "You missed me." Reyes cursed under his breath. Hastings stepped closer to the sink, scanning the surface. There, resting beside the faucet, was Emily Carter's phone. The same phone locked inside police evidence storage across town. Reyes' voice cracked. That's impossible. It's in the evidence locker." Hastings stared at the device, dread pooling in her stomach. The screen lit up suddenly. Incoming call. Unknown number. The phone began vibrating softly against the porcelain sink. Reyes reached for it cautiously. "Should I answer?" Hastings swallowed hard. "Yes." Reyes pressed the speaker button. For a moment, there was nothing. Then slow breathing filled the room, followed by a calm, familiar voice. "Detective Hastings." Her blood ran cold. "Victor," she said. A soft chuckle echoed through the phone. "You're getting closer," he whispered. "But you're still looking in the wrong places." Hastings clenched her jaw. "Where are you?" Silence lingered, thick and deliberate. Then Victor spoke again. "I told Emily I would wait forever." His voice softened, almost affectionate. "And now, I'm waiting for you." The line went dead, and in that moment, Hastings realized something terrifying. Victor Hale wasn't running from them anymore. He was leading them somewhere. The silence inside room 307 felt heavier after the call ended. Detective Laura Hastings stared at Emily Carter's phone lying on the sink, its screen slowly fading back to black. Every instinct told her this wasn't just a taunt. Victor Hale hadn't returned the phone by accident. He wanted it found. Reyes exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "How did he even get this?" he asked. "That's the wrong question," Hastings replied quietly. Reyes looked at her. "What's the right one?" She turned toward him, her expression tense. "Why did he give it back?" Within the hour, the motel room was sealed again, and forensic teams were called in for a second sweep. Evidence technicians dusted every surface, scanned for footprints, and checked air vents, plumbing panels, and ceiling tiles for hidden entry points. Nothing. No fingerprints. No shoe impressions. No fibers. Victor had entered and exited room 307 without leaving a trace. Except for the phone. Back at the station, the evidence locker was inspected immediately. Officer Malik, the property custodian, stood pale and sweating beside the metal storage cabinets. "I locked it myself," he insisted. "Logged it. Sealed it. No one signed it out." Hastings checked the locker log. He was right. Emily's phone was still listed as secured evidence. Reyes unlocked the locker and opened it slowly. Inside sat an empty evidence bag, perfectly resealed. Hastings examined the tamper strip carefully. It hadn't been broken. "That's not possible," Reyes muttered. Hastings didn't answer, because deep down she already knew. Victor wasn't just stalking victims. He was studying systems, learning procedures, testing weaknesses. Digital forensics extracted fresh data from the returned phone. Despite the cracked screen and wiped call history, technicians recovered a partial GPS log hidden within the device's background memory. It showed one movement pattern after Victor left room 307. The phone traveled north, toward the abandoned mining district investigators had already searched. But the path ended near a location they had overlooked, an old maintenance road leading into the hills. By dusk, Hastings and Reyes were leading a search convoy through the snow-covered mining trail. Pine trees towered overhead, their branches sagging under fresh frost. The road narrowed into a winding path barely wide enough for 2 vehicles. After 2 miles, the trail opened into a clearing, and there, hidden between jagged rock formations, stood an abandoned ranger cabin. The cabin looked abandoned decades ago. Wood siding had rotted into gray splinters, and the roof sagged dangerously under winter snow. Reyes stepped out of the cruiser, scanning the area. "You think he's here?" he asked. Hastings studied the structure carefully. "No," she said. Reyes frowned. "Then why are we here?" She pointed toward the cabin door. "It's open." The tactical team swept the building cautiously, weapons drawn. Hastings followed behind them, heart pounding as they entered the narrow doorway. The interior smelled like dust and damp wood. Furniture had been stripped long ago, leaving only cracked floorboards and peeling wallpaper. "Clear," one officer called. Another voice echoed from the back room. You need to see this. Hastings stepped into what once served as a bedroom, and froze. The walls were covered in photographs. Hundreds of them. Emily Carter, captured from every angle imaginable. Walking to work. Sitting in a cafe. Loading groceries into her car. Standing outside her parents' house. Some photos dated back nearly 2 years. Victor had been watching her long before anyone realized. Reyes stepped closer, scanning the walls in disbelief. "This is beyond obsession," he said quietly. Hastings moved deeper into the room, noticing handwritten notes pinned beside several photos. Schedules, locations, habits, even weather conditions. Victor hadn't just studied Emily. He had mapped her life. Then Hastings saw something else. On the far wall, pinned between dozens of Emily's photographs, was a new set of images. These were recent, and they weren't of Emily. They were of Hastings herself, entering the police station, walking to her car, standing outside her apartment building. Reyes cursed under his breath. "He's watching you now." Hastings forced herself to remain calm, though her pulse hammered violently. "He's escalating," she said. Reyes turned toward her. "Escalating?" "He's replacing Emily," she replied. Forensics processed the cabin overnight. Investigators recovered food wrappers, clothing fibers, and one partially burned notebook hidden inside a floorboard compartment. Inside the notebook were pages filled with neat, controlled handwriting. Victor's journal. Hastings read it alone in her office the next morning. Most entries described Emily with chilling affection. He wrote about her laugh, her routines, even her expressions during dental visits. But the final pages shifted dramatically. His tone changed. Colder. Detached. One entry read, "She betrayed our story by ending it too soon." Another followed days later. "The detective listens better. She pays attention. She hears me." Hastings swallowed hard and continued reading. The final entry made her hands tremble. "She will understand why Emily couldn't." Reyes entered her office minutes later, holding a forensic report. "We found fingerprints in the cabin," he said. Hastings looked up hopefully. "Victor?" Reyes shook his head slowly. "No. Yours." Hastings stared at him, stunned. "That's impossible. I've never been there before last night." Reyes placed the report on her desk. They were found on a glass jar hidden under the bed frame. The dust pattern suggests they were left days before we searched the cabin. Hastings felt a chill crawl through her spine. Victor hadn't just been watching her. He had been close enough to plant evidence using her prints. That evening, Hastings returned to her apartment cautiously. Patrol units monitored the building while she searched her living space inch by inch. Nothing seemed disturbed. No forced entry. No missing items. But when she opened her bedroom closet, she found a small cardboard box resting on the floor. Her blood ran cold. Inside the box were 3 items. A single photograph of Emily Carter smiling at the Cedar Hollow vending machine, a disposable camera, and a folded note. Hastings unfolded it slowly. The handwriting was unmistakable. Victor's. The message read, "Every story needs 2 voices." Reyes insisted on relocating Hastings to a safe house immediately, but she refused. "If I disappear," she said, "he wins control of the investigation." Reyes argued for nearly 10 minutes before finally agreeing, but he doubled patrol presence around her apartment building. That night, Hastings examined the disposable camera Victor left behind. The film was quickly developed at the forensic lab. 24 photos emerged, each one taken inside room 307. But they weren't from the night of the murder. They were older, days before Emily checked into the motel. Victor had been inside that room before Emily ever arrived. Preparing. Waiting. The final photograph in the roll showed something that made Hastings' stomach drop. It was a mirror shot inside room 307's bathroom. Victor stood behind the camera, partially reflected in the glass. His hood lowered slightly, revealing part of his face for the first time. And behind him, written faintly in condensation across the mirror, were 3 words. "She will come." Hastings stared at the image for a long time, because below those words, in a different handwriting, someone else had written a reply. Smaller. Messier. Almost desperate. "I won't." The handwriting matched Emily Carter's. Later that night, Hastings sat alone in her apartment reviewing the case timeline again. Every clue, every message, every location Victor had revealed felt deliberate, like stepping stones. He wasn't hiding from her. He was guiding her, leading her toward something. At exactly 1:59 a.m., her phone vibrated on the table beside her. Unknown number. Hastings stared at it for several seconds before answering. "I'm listening," she said calmly. Victor's voice responded immediately. "You found the cabin faster than I expected." Hastings gripped the phone tighter. "What do you want?" Victor's tone softened. "Understanding." She laughed bitterly. "You murdered her." A pause followed. Then Victor spoke quietly. "She chose fear instead of truth." Hastings felt anger rise in her chest. "You killed an innocent woman because she rejected you." Victor's breathing slowed through the receiver. "You still think this is about rejection? Then what is it about?" she demanded. The silence stretched long enough that Hastings thought he had hung up. Then he spoke again. "It's about finishing the story correctly." Hastings' voice hardened. "And what happens when your story ends?" Victor's answer came like a whisper pressed against her ear. "It doesn't." The call disconnected. And seconds later, Hastings heard something that made her blood freeze. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, echoing from the hallway outside her apartment door. The footsteps outside Detective Laura Hastings' apartment were slow, measured, almost patient. She froze in the center of her living room, phone still clutched tightly in her hand. Her pulse thundered in her ears as the sound drew closer, each step echoing through the hallway like a ticking clock counting down to something irreversible. Another step, then another. The floorboards outside her door creaked faintly. Hastings reached for the service pistol resting on her kitchen counter and moved silently toward the entryway. The patrol officers assigned to her building were stationed outside, but suddenly she realized she hadn't heard their voices or radio chatter in several minutes. That silence terrified her more than the footsteps. She pressed her back against the wall beside the door, raising her weapon as she listened. The steps stopped, right outside her apartment. Then came a soft sound, 3 gentle knocks. Not forceful, not hurried, almost polite. Hastings held her breath. The knock came again, 3 times. Her phone vibrated suddenly in her hand. Unknown number. Victor. She hesitated for only a second before answering, keeping her voice low. "You're outside." A quiet chuckle flowed through the speaker. "I'm very close," Victor whispered. Hastings gritted her teeth. "If you're here, it's over. Officers are downstairs." Victor didn't respond immediately. Then she heard something through the phone that made her stomach drop. The same 3 soft knocks, echoing through the hallway, perfectly synchronized with the call. Hastings stepped closer to the door, her grip tightening on the gun. "Why are you doing this?" she demanded. Victor's voice softened again, almost soothing. "You're the only one who's listening to me properly. You murdered Emily." Silence lingered. Then he spoke calmly. "I freed her from a story she refused to finish." Hastings felt anger flare through her fear. "You're sick." Another pause. "No," Victor replied quietly. "I'm patient." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the stairwell down the hallway, followed by shouting voices and the burst of police radios coming back to life. "Unit 3, respond. Officer down. Suspect fleeing." Footsteps pounded past Hastings' apartment door. She swung it open instantly. 2 patrol officers sprinted toward the stairwell, weapons drawn. One officer lay slumped against the hallway wall near the elevator, unconscious but breathing. Reyes burst through the emergency exit seconds later. "Did he come here?" he shouted. Hastings lowered her gun slowly. "He was here," she said. "He wanted me to know it." Security footage from the building revealed Victor entering through a maintenance entrance 30 minutes earlier. He wore a janitor's uniform, pushing a cleaning cart filled with equipment. The patrol officer assigned to monitor the hallway had been lured away by a false fire alarm triggered 2 floors down. Victor had slipped past unnoticed. He reached Hastings' apartment door, stood there for nearly 2 minutes, and then walked away. Reyes watched the footage with growing frustration. "He could have forced entry," Reyes said. "He had time." "He didn't want to," Hastings replied. Reyes looked at her. "He wanted to prove he could reach me anytime." The following morning, the investigation escalated into a statewide manhunt. Victor Hale's face appeared across news broadcasts, highway billboards, and social media alerts. But Hastings suspected public exposure wouldn't stop him. Victor wasn't hiding in fear. He was hiding with purpose. A breakthrough arrived that afternoon from forensic linguistics specialists analyzing Victor's journal entries and recorded calls. One analyst pointed out a recurring pattern in Victor's speech. He uses narrative structure, the analyst explained. He frames everything like a story with chapters, beginnings, endings. Hastings leaned forward. Does he ever mention a final chapter? The analyst nodded slowly. Yes. He refers to something called the closing scene. That phrase sent a chill through Hastings' chest. What is it? Reyes asked. The analyst hesitated. In several entries, Victor describes it as a place where truth and memory meet. Hastings frowned. That doesn't help. The analyst continued scanning notes. There's one repeated reference tied to the phrase. He turned the monitor toward them. Victor had written, "The closing scene must happen where she first understood me." Hastings and Reyes returned to Brookhaven immediately, combing through every documented interaction between Victor and Emily. Dental clinic, local cafes, parks, libraries. But one location stood out, Emily's childhood home. Emily's parents allowed investigators to search the property again, though they remained shaken by the renewed attention. The modest suburban house looked peaceful beneath the winter sun, its porch decorated with fading holiday lights still hanging from the railing. Hastings stepped inside slowly, scanning family photos lining the walls. "Emily grew up here?" she asked. Her mother nodded quietly. "All her life." In Emily's old bedroom, Hastings noticed something unusual. A small corkboard still hung above the desk. It displayed childhood drawings, school ribbons, and handwritten notes from years past. But one item didn't belong among childhood memories. A torn photograph taped near the corner. It showed Emily standing outside the dental clinic parking lot. Victor stood in the background, partially hidden behind a car. The photo had been taken months before his supposed death. "Emily found this after the fire," her mother said quietly. "She showed it to us once, said she thought he might still be alive." "Why didn't she go to police?" Reyes asked. Her father lowered his eyes. She was afraid no one would believe her. Hastings turned toward the bedroom window. Outside, the backyard stretched into a narrow wooded strip leading toward a dried creek bed. "Did Emily ever spend time back there?" Hastings asked. Her mother nodded. "She used to play near the creek when she was little. Victor asked her about it once during an appointment. She thought it was strange." Search teams combed the wooded area immediately. After 2 hours, a K-9 unit alerted near the creek bed. Buried beneath leaves and frozen dirt, officers uncovered a rusted metal box sealed with duct tape. Inside were dozens of cassette tapes, each labeled with dates, some going back nearly 3 years. The tapes contained recorded therapy sessions Victor secretly conducted with himself. Hastings listened to them late into the night. Victor spoke into the recorder like he was holding conversations with Emily. He analyzed her reactions during dental visits, described her expressions, even rehearsed imaginary responses to questions she never asked. But the final tape chilled Hastings the most. Victor's voice sounded calmer, almost peaceful. "She remembers the creek," he whispered into the recorder. "That's where she felt safe. That's where she will finally listen." Hastings closed the tape recorder slowly, dread settling heavily in her chest. Victor wasn't planning random attacks. He was recreating emotional landmarks from Emily's life. Places tied to memories. Places tied to trust. That night, Hastings sat alone reviewing the timeline once more when Reyes rushed into her office, breathless. "We just got another call," he said. "From Victor?" she asked. Reyes nodded. "Not exactly. It came through 911 again." Hastings stood instantly. "What did he say?" Reyes handed her a transcript. Hastings read it carefully. "Dispatcher, 911, what's your emergency?" "Caller." Female voice. "I think he's following me." "Dispatcher, where are you located?" "Caller, Cedar Hollow. Room 214. Hastings' heart skipped. Room 214 was directly across the courtyard from room 307. Reyes swallowed hard. The caller hung up before giving her name. Police units rushed to the motel immediately. Hastings and Reyes arrived minutes later. Room 214's door was slightly open. Inside, officers found a young woman sitting on the bed, shaking violently but unharmed. Her name was Natalie Briggs, 23 years old, traveling alone. I saw him, Natalie whispered through tears as Hastings sat beside her. Where? Hastings asked gently. Natalie pointed toward the courtyard. He was standing outside my window, just watching. Then he held up a phone and walked away. Hastings' stomach tightened. Did you see his face? Natalie nodded slowly. Yes. Hastings leaned forward. Can you describe him? Natalie swallowed hard. He looked calm, like he wasn't hiding. Officers searched the motel grounds again. No Victor. No trace. Except for one thing. Outside Natalie's window, lying in the snow, was a cassette tape labeled in black marker. For the detective. Hastings pressed play in her car moments later. Victor's voice filled the speakers, soft and steady. You're almost ready to understand the ending, he whispered. Hastings gripped the steering wheel tightly. There is no ending, she muttered under her breath. Victor continued. There's only one place left to finish this properly. A long pause followed. Then Victor spoke the words that made her blood run cold. Meet me where she first felt safe. The tape clicked off, and Hastings knew exactly where he meant. The frozen creek behind Emily Carter's childhood home. The frozen creek behind Emily Carter's childhood home stretched like a scar through the quiet woods of Brookhaven. Snow blanketed the ground in thick layers, muffling every sound, every movement, every secret hidden beneath it. Detective Laura Hastings stood at the tree line, staring at the narrow valley below. Patrol lights flickered behind her, casting long shadows between the branches as officers established a perimeter around the wooded area. Reyes approached quietly, pulling his jacket tighter against the cold. You're sure this is where he meant? He asked. Hastings nodded. It matches his pattern, she said. He chooses places tied to Emily's memories, emotional anchors, locations she trusted. Reyes scanned the frozen creek bed below. You think he's already here? Hastings didn't answer right away, because deep down she already knew he was. Search teams spread through the woods carefully, flashlights cutting thin beams through the falling snow. The creek itself was frozen solid, its surface cracked in jagged lines beneath the weight of winter. Emily's father had told investigators she used to skate here as a child. It was where she felt peaceful, where she escaped when life overwhelmed her. Victor knew that, which meant Victor had studied every piece of her life with terrifying precision. Hastings descended the slope toward the creek cautiously, her boots crunching against frozen leaves. The air felt unnaturally still, the kind of silence that pressed against the ears until it became almost deafening. Then she saw it. Near the center of the frozen creek, someone had cleared a circle in the snow. Inside the circle stood a wooden chair, facing the tree line, facing her. Reyes cursed under his breath as he stepped beside her. He's staging something, he said. Hastings moved closer slowly, scanning the area for movement, for shadows, for anything that didn't belong. The chair looked old, weathered, like it had been dragged from some abandoned storage building. Snow had gathered along its legs, suggesting it had been placed there recently. Taped to the backrest was another cassette recorder. Hastings approached carefully and pressed play. Victor's voice crackled through the small speaker. You found the right place, he said softly. Hastings glanced around the tree line. Where are you? She called out. Only silence answered. The recording continued. She loved this creek. She told me once that the ice felt like glass, like she was standing on memories. Hastings felt her chest tighten. Victor, she shouted. This ends tonight. The recording paused briefly. Then his voice returned, quieter, almost sorrowful. It doesn't end, it transforms. Suddenly, one of the search officers called out from the east side of the creek. Detective, over here. Hastings and Reyes rushed toward the voice, navigating through snow-covered brush until they reached a cluster of fallen trees near the creek bank. There, partially hidden beneath branches, was a shallow grave. Forensic teams worked quickly, brushing away snow and frozen soil with careful precision. Hastings stood nearby, dread building inside her chest with every passing minute. When they finally uncovered the contents, the forest seemed to fall completely silent. Inside the grave lay Emily Carter's coat, the same coat she had been wearing the night she died, folded carefully, placed like an offering. Reyes swallowed hard. Why would he bury her coat here? He asked. Hastings stared at the fabric, her mind racing. Because he associates objects with memory, she said quietly. He's recreating moments tied to her life. Reyes looked uneasy. Then what moment is this? Hastings didn't answer, because she wasn't sure she wanted to know. Later that night, forensic analysis revealed something hidden in the coat's lining. A second disposable phone, still powered on. Hastings sat inside the mobile command unit as technicians extracted data from the device. The phone contained only one saved video file, time-stamped 1 hour earlier. Hastings hesitated before pressing play. The video opened in darkness, then slowly adjusted to reveal Victor's face for the first time. He stood in front of the frozen creek, snow falling gently around him. His expression was calm, almost peaceful, as if he were recording a personal journal entry. "Emily always said memories are louder in quiet places," he said softly. Hastings felt her throat tighten. Victor's eyes shifted slightly toward the camera. "I wanted her to hear me clearly here," he continued. "But she wouldn't listen." He paused, his expression darkening. "So now you will." The camera turned slowly, revealing the creek clearing, the chair, and then something behind it. A second chair, facing the first. Hastings leaned closer to the screen, her pulse quickening. Victor stepped back into frame. "Stories need two voices," he whispered. "You already know that." The video ended abruptly. Reyes exhaled sharply. "He's setting up a meeting," he said. Hastings nodded slowly. "He wants me to sit in that chair." Reyes shook his head. "That's not happening." Hastings stared at the paused video frame, Victor's calm eyes frozen on the screen. "He's escalating," she said. "And when he escalates, he becomes unpredictable." Search teams remained in the woods until sunrise, but Victor was gone again, leaving only staged memories behind. But Hastings knew something had changed. Victor wasn't just leaving clues anymore. He was building a final scene. That afternoon, forensic linguists re-examined Victor's journal entries again, focusing on the phrase, "the closing scene." One analyst discovered a hidden pattern in Victor's writing timestamps. When mapped against Emily's life events, the entries aligned with significant emotional moments from her past. Birthdays, family vacations, childhood milestones, and one final entry, marked only with coordinates. Hastings entered the coordinates into the mapping system. The location appeared instantly. Cedar Hollow Cemetery. Reyes stared at the screen. "That's where Emily's buried," he said quietly. Hastings nodded slowly. "And where Victor plans to end his story." By evening, surveillance units quietly surrounded the cemetery without public alert. Snow fell steadily as officers positioned themselves between headstones and tree lines, waiting for movement, waiting for Victor to appear. Hastings stood near Emily Carter's grave, staring at the polished granite marker illuminated by floodlights. Flowers left by her family had frozen beneath thin layers of frost. Reyes stepped beside her. "You don't have to be here," he said. Hastings shook her head. "Yes, I do." Hours passed. Nothing moved. The cemetery remained silent beneath the snowfall. Then, at exactly 11:47 p.m., Hastings' radio crackled softly. Movement detected, north entrance. She turned toward the distant gate. A figure stepped through the falling snow. Tall, calm, unhurried. Victor Hale. He walked between the headstones slowly, his hands visible, his expression serene as he approached Emily's grave. Officers tightened their positions, weapons trained from hidden vantage points, waiting for Hastings' signal. Victor stopped several feet from her. Their eyes met for the first time. Up close, he looked exactly like the photograph. Gentle, ordinary, terrifyingly composed. "You came," Victor said softly. Hastings didn't move. "You murdered her," she replied. Victor tilted his head slightly. "She's still part of the story." Hastings' voice hardened. "This ends tonight." Victor smiled faintly. "You still think you're writing the ending." Snow drifted between them as silence stretched across the cemetery. Then Victor slowly reached into his coat pocket. Officers shifted, fingers tightening on triggers. Victor pulled out a small cassette tape and placed it gently on Emily's grave. "For you," he said quietly. Hastings stepped forward cautiously and picked up the tape. "What is it?" she asked. Victor's smile faded, replaced by something almost sad. "The truth," he whispered. Suddenly, Hastings noticed something in Victor's other hand. A small remote device. Her heart dropped. Victor, she said slowly. What did you do? Victor's gaze shifted toward the surrounding cemetery. I finished preparing the closing scene, he replied calmly. Reyes shouted into his radio. Bomb squad. Now. Victor's thumb hovered over the remote. Hastings stepped closer, her voice urgent. You don't have to do this. Victor looked at her, truly looked at her, for the first time. I already did, he said softly. By the time dawn crept over Hollow Creek, Detective Mara Ellison hadn't slept in nearly 30 hours. The evidence from Cabin 14 had been bagged, photographed, and rushed to the forensics lab, but her mind refused to slow down. Because they finally had something they'd never had before. A survivor. The girl in Cabin 14. The teenager found hiding beneath the floorboards had been transported to Hollow Creek General under heavy police escort. Doctors confirmed she was severely malnourished, dehydrated, and suffering from untreated infections, but alive. Barely. Her name, they learned, was Lena Corbett. The name hit Mara like a brick. Lena Corbett had vanished 6 years earlier, while camping with her family at a state park 200 miles south of Hollow Creek. At the time, her disappearance had sparked a statewide search effort. Helicopters, tracking dogs, hundreds of volunteers combing the forest. But Lena had never been found. Until now. Hospital interrogation. Mara stood outside Lena's hospital room, staring through the glass. The girl looked impossibly small beneath the blankets. Her skin was pale, almost gray, and her hair, once described in old photos as bright chestnut, hung in brittle, uneven strands around her shoulders. Dr. Feldman approached quietly beside her. She's conscious, he said, lowering his voice. But she's fragile, physically and psychologically. I only need a few questions, Mara replied. She hasn't spoken much. Just fragments. Night terrors. Repeating phrases. What phrases? The doctor hesitated. She keeps saying, "Don't let him hear you breathing." Mara's stomach tightened. First words. When Mara entered the room, Lena's eyes flickered toward her immediately. The girl's pupils were wide, darting between corners as if scanning for danger that wasn't there. Mara pulled a chair close to the bed, but kept her posture relaxed, non-threatening. Hi, Lena. I'm Detective Ellison. You're safe now. The girl's lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Mara placed a photograph gently on the bedside table. It showed the faded Polaroid from Cabin 14, the 6 children standing in front of the lodge. Do you recognize this? Mara asked softly. Lena's breathing changed instantly. Faster. Shallower. Her fingers trembled beneath the blanket. He made us stand there, Lena whispered, her voice rough like broken glass. He liked pictures. Mara leaned forward slightly. Who, Lena? Silence stretched across the room. The machines beside the bed hummed steadily, tracking Lena's racing heartbeat. Finally, Lena's eyes filled with tears. He called himself the caretaker. Rules of the caretaker. Over the next hour, Lena spoke in broken fragments, forcing Mara to piece together the nightmare story like assembling shattered glass. The caretaker wasn't just a kidnapper. He was obsessed with control. He said we were broken, Lena whispered. Said the world didn't deserve us. That he was saving us. How many children were there? Mara asked. At first 6. The number from the photograph. What happened to the others? Lena's eyes drifted toward the ceiling, her expression hollow. He punished them when they broke rules. What rules? Never speak above a whisper. Never leave your room without permission. Never look at his face. Mara's pulse quickened. Did you ever see him clearly? Lena shook her head weakly. He wore masks. Different ones. Animal faces. Sometimes wood. Sometimes metal. Mara felt chills crawl down her spine. The masks recovered in Cabin 14 suddenly carried far more weight. The night, everything changed. Mara flipped to a new page in her notebook. Lena, how did you survive? For the first time, Lena's expression shifted. Not fear, but something heavier. Guilt. I wasn't supposed to, she whispered. Mara waited. The last girl tried to run. Her name was Daisy. She found a window in one of the cabins and climbed out during a storm. Mara recognized the name instantly. Daisy Merritt, missing 4 years earlier. He caught her, Lena continued, her voice cracking. Dragged her back, made us watch. Mara clenched her jaw but forced herself to remain composed. He said escape meant abandonment. Said she didn't deserve protection anymore. What happened to her, Lena? The girl squeezed her eyes shut. He took her into the woods. She never came back. The underground rooms. Mara leaned closer. Lena, we found the crawl space beneath cabin 14. Were there others? Lena's eyes snapped open, panic flooding her face. You went down there? Yes. You shouldn't go deeper, she whispered urgently. He has tunnels. Mara's pulse spiked. What tunnels? They connect the cabins, Lena said. And the main lodge. And the forest. How big are they? I don't know, Lena whispered. He built them over years. Made us help sometimes, moving dirt, carrying with nails. Mara felt the case explode open inside her mind. The caretaker hadn't just used the cabins. He had built an entire underground network beneath whispering pines. The whispers. Lena, Mara said carefully. Why did he call it whispering pines? The girl stared past Mara, as if seeing something that wasn't there. Because he said the forest talks, she murmured. He said it tells him which children are lost enough to save. Mara's skin prickled. That's why he took kids who were alone. Runaways. Kids walking home from school. Children whose families wouldn't be believed when they said something felt wrong. He studied them first, Lena added faintly. Watched them for weeks. Mara thought about the timeline of disappearances. The geographic patterns. The careful selection. This wasn't impulsive violence. It was meticulous. Calculated. The final revelation. Mara hesitated before asking her final question. Lena, is he still alive? The girl's breathing hitched. He never leaves, she whispered. Did you see him recently? Lena nodded slowly. When the police came to the cabins last week, he knew. He said the forest warned him. He started moving things. Packing. Mara's blood turned cold. Moving where? Lena's lips trembled. There's another place. The symbol returns. Where, Lena? Mara pressed gently. The girl swallowed hard. He carved the symbol everywhere. Trees. Walls. Underground doors. Mara pulled out the sketch they had recovered earlier. The circle with 3 downward lines. Lena gasped the moment she saw it. That means transition, she whispered. Transition to what? It means he's moving the children to a new sanctuary. Mara felt dread sink into her chest. How many children are there now? She asked quietly. Lena stared at her, tears spilling down her cheeks. I don't know, she whispered. I stopped counting after 10. The escape. How did you escape, Lena? The girl hesitated, as if deciding whether to betray something sacred or dangerous. He trusted me, she finally said. Said I followed rules better than the others. Mara's heart pounded. He left me locked in the crawl space while he moved supplies. I found a loose board and climbed out when the police were searching. Mara leaned forward. Lena, did he see you escape? Silence filled the room. Then Lena shook her head slowly. No, she whispered. But he'll know soon. A warning. Mara stood to leave, knowing Lena needed rest, but the girl grabbed her wrist weakly. Detective. Yes. He doesn't think he's hurting children, Lena said, her voice barely audible. He thinks he's rescuing them from families that don't deserve them. Mara felt ice settle in her veins. That makes him more dangerous than someone who knows they're evil, Lena added. Mara nodded grimly. You're right. Lena's fingers tightened around Mara's sleeve one last time. He watches the parents first, she whispered. Listens to arguments. Follows them. He decides who deserves to lose their children. Mara's breath caught. Lena, did he ever say how he finds them? The girl's expression darkened with remembered terror. He works where families trust him. The name in the files. An hour later, Mara sat in the police archives room, flipping through personnel records connected to Whispering Pines. Maintenance workers, contractors, seasonal staff. She scanned hundreds of names until one stopped her cold. Elliot Grange, former structural engineer hired to renovate Whispering Pines Lodge 17 years earlier. Terminated abruptly after a dispute with management. No forwarding address. Mara flipped to the next page. Attached was a photograph. A smiling man in his early 40s. Neatly trimmed beard. Calm, approachable expression. And carved faintly into the wooden beam behind him during the renovation photo. The same symbol. Circle. 3 downward lines. Mara felt her pulse hammer in her ears. Because Elliot Grange had disappeared from public records the same year the first child vanished. The phone call. Mara grabbed her phone and dialed dispatch. Run everything you have on Elliot Grange. Financials, relatives, property ownership, any land purchases within a 100-mile radius. Yes, detective. She ended the call and stared at the photo again. If Elliot Grange was the caretaker, then he had spent nearly 2 decades building a hidden world beneath whispering pines. And now he was moving. The final discovery of the night. An hour later, Officer Delgado rushed into the archives room, breathless. Detective, you need to see this. What is it? We found Grange's last known purchase. Where? Delgado swallowed hard. Abandoned summer camp, 70 miles north. Mara's stomach dropped. Name? Delgado hesitated before answering. Sanctuary Ridge. The name alone sounded like a promise. Sanctuary Ridge. To anyone outside the investigation, it might have sounded like a peaceful retreat. A place where children laughed around bonfires and counselors taught archery and canoeing. But to Detective Mara Ellison, the name felt like a threat carefully disguised as hope. Because she knew men like Elliot Grange didn't choose names accidentally. They built fantasies around them. The race north. By sunrise, Hollow Creek police had mobilized a full tactical response. State troopers, K-9 units, and federal agents lined up in a convoy stretching nearly a mile down the empty highway leading north. Mara sat in the passenger seat of the lead SUV beside Officer Delgado, staring at the thick forest rolling past the window. The trees seemed darker here, the pine branches crowding closer to the road as if closing ranks against intruders. How long has Sanctuary Ridge been abandoned? She asked. Delgado kept his eyes on the road. Officially, 12 years. And unofficially? He glanced at her grimly. Utilities records show intermittent power usage over the last 5 years. Nothing consistent enough to raise alarms, but enough to suggest someone's been there. Mara's jaw tightened. Grange hadn't just moved operations. He had prepared this place long before leaving Whispering Pines. The layout. Aerial drone footage arrived on Mara's tablet as they drove. She studied the grainy images carefully. Sanctuary Ridge sat on a plateau overlooking a valley thick with fog. The property included a central lodge, 7 cabin clusters, a dining hall, an abandoned rope course, and several storage barns scattered along the treeline. But one detail stood out immediately. Fresh tire tracks leading to the main lodge. Mara zoomed in further. There were also signs of disturbed soil around several cabins. Her pulse quickened. He's digging again, she muttered. The perimeter. By mid-morning, the convoy stopped nearly half a mile from the camp. The terrain beyond was too uneven for vehicles. Teams moved forward on foot, weapons drawn, spreading out through the forest in coordinated formation. The air smelled damp and metallic, like rain was gathering somewhere beyond the hills. The only sound was boots crunching pine needles and the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Mara adjusted her vest and followed the tactical team leader, Sergeant Halvorsen. "You expecting resistance?" he asked quietly. "Yes," Mara said, "but not the kind you're thinking." He raised an eyebrow. "Grange believes he's protecting these children. That makes him unpredictable. He may not see us as rescuers." Halvorsen nodded slowly. "Then we move fast." The first cabin. The team reached the outermost cabin cluster within minutes. The doors hung open. Inside, the scene mirrored Whispering Pines, but worse. Mattresses lined the floor, each paired with a small wooden crate labeled with children's names. Toys sat arranged neatly on shelves, but every item was identical. Same stuffed bear. Same coloring books. Same dull gray clothing folded in stacks. Control disguised as care. Mara's chest tightened as she scanned the crates. Several names matched children currently listed as missing nationwide. But the beds were empty. "They were here," Delgado whispered behind her. "Recently," Mara confirmed, pointing to half-eaten food left on a metal tray. Halvorsen stepped forward. "Search the entire compound. Now." The barn. The second discovery came 15 minutes later, when a K-9 unit alerted near one of the storage barns at the edge of the property. The barn doors were chained shut from the outside. Halvorsen signaled 2 officers to break the lock. The chain snapped with a metallic crack that echoed across the clearing. Inside, the darkness felt suffocating. Flashlights swept across wooden beams, hay bales, and stacked supply crates. Then Mara heard it. A faint sound. Not quite a voice. A whimper. "Police!" Halvorsen shouted. "If anyone is inside, make a sound." Silence followed. Then scratching. From beneath the floorboards. The hidden chamber. Officers pried up the wooden planks carefully, revealing a narrow ladder descending into darkness. The air rising from below smelled stale and humid. Mara grabbed a flashlight and climbed down behind Halvorsen. The chamber beneath the barn was larger than expected, nearly the size of a basement apartment. Wooden bunks lined the walls, and small lanterns hung from hooks overhead. And in the far corner, huddled together like frightened animals, were 5 children. The youngest couldn't have been older than 6. The oldest maybe 13. Mara lowered her weapon immediately and crouched. "You're safe," she said gently. The children stared at her with wide, hollow eyes. One of the older boys stepped forward slightly. "He said not to trust strangers," he whispered. Mara softened her voice. "Did he tell you what to call him?" The boy nodded. "The caretaker." Mara swallowed the anger rising in her throat. "Where is he now?" she asked. The boy hesitated. "He left before sunrise. Took others with him." "How many others?" The boy counted silently on his fingers. 7. Mara felt dread crawl up her spine. That meant at least 12 victims had been here, and nearly half were still missing. The message on the wall. While medics escorted the rescued children outside, Mara continued searching the underground chamber. That's when she saw it. Carved into the far wall behind the bunks was the familiar symbol, the circle with 3 downward lines. But this time, words had been scratched beneath it. "You are late." Mara's stomach dropped, because below that, carved much deeper into the wood, were 3 additional words. "I warned you." Grange's journal. Delgado discovered it inside the main lodge an hour later. A leather-bound notebook hidden beneath loose floorboards in Grange's former office. The pages were filled with tight, obsessive handwriting documenting his beliefs. Mara flipped through them quickly. Families are fragile structures. Some children are born into collapse. I do not steal them. I rescue them before they fall. Her hands trembled slightly as she turned another page. Law enforcement sees only absence. I see potential. The forest speaks through behavior, through neglect, through fear in their eyes. Then she reached the final entry, written only 2 days earlier. The detective listens. She notices details others ignore. She reminds me of myself before the world disappointed me. Mara's pulse slammed in her ears, because the next line was written darker, as if carved into the page. She will understand when the time comes. The personal file. Tucked inside the back cover of the journal was a sealed envelope. Mara opened it slowly. Inside were printed surveillance photographs. Of her. One showed her leaving the police station at night. Another captured her grocery shopping. A third showed her standing outside her apartment building. Mara felt her breath catch. Grange hadn't just been watching families. He had been watching her. The realization. Halvorsen stepped into the lodge, noticing her expression. "What is it?" Mara handed him the photographs. He swore under his breath. "We need to pull you off this case," he said immediately. "No," Mara replied sharply. "That's exactly what he wants. He's targeting you, detective." "He's studying me," she corrected, "because he thinks I'll relate to him." Halvorsen stared at her. "And will you?" Mara met his gaze steadily. "No," she said. The final clue. Forensics teams continued sweeping the camp until late afternoon, uncovering food caches, medical supplies, and partially collapsed tunnel entrances leading deeper into the hills. But the most disturbing discovery came from AK-9 unit tracking a scent trail beyond the northern treeline. Nearly half a mile from the camp, officers found a freshly cut path through the forest leading toward a narrow canyon. At the canyon entrance, carved directly into the rock face, was the symbol again. Circle, 3 downward lines, and below it, a wooden sign nailed into the stone. Mara approached slowly, reading the words burned into the wood. The final sanctuary. The sound from the canyon. The wind shifted as Mara stood at the canyon entrance. A low, hollow echo drifted outward from the darkness ahead. It almost sounded like children singing. Soft, rhythmic, controlled. Mara's chest tightened, because she realized something horrifying. Grange hadn't just relocated. He had escalated. The sunset warning. As the sun dipped behind the canyon walls, casting long shadows across the stone, Mara turned to Halvorsen. "We move in at dawn," she said. He nodded, but neither of them said what they were both thinking. If Grange truly believed he was building a sanctuary, then the deeper they followed him, the more desperate and dangerous he would become. The canyon swallowed light long before the sun disappeared. Detective Mara Ellison stood at the edge of the narrow stone entrance, staring into the dark mouth carved into the cliffside. The air drifting out of the canyon was colder than the surrounding forest, unnaturally still, as if the wind itself avoided entering. Behind her, tactical teams prepared silently. Flashlights were checked, radios tested, weapons loaded, but Mara could feel something else building in the air. Tension, not just from the officers around her, from the place itself. The descent. At precisely 5:12 a.m., the teams entered the canyon. The ground sloped downward gradually, guiding them through a winding passage of jagged rock walls that narrowed until officers were forced to move single file. Their boots echoed against the stone floor, the sound repeating over and over as if the canyon were whispering back to them. 50 yards in, the natural path ended, and the man-made structure began. Wooden beams reinforced the tunnel walls. Electric wiring ran overhead, feeding dim industrial lights spaced unevenly along the ceiling. The construction was crude but functional, built by someone with professional structural knowledge. Grange's signature. Mara ran her fingers briefly along one of the support beams. The wood was new, recently installed. "He's still expanding," she whispered. The first door. The tunnel split into two separate corridors. On the left, officers found a heavy steel door bolted into the rock. Halvorsen signaled 2 officers forward. They forced the lock with hydraulic cutters, metal snapping with a sharp crack that echoed through the tunnel. Inside, the room resembled a classroom. Small desks arranged in perfect rows. Chalkboards covered with neatly written rules. The caretaker protects you. The outside world hurts you. Families break, sanctuaries heal. Mara's stomach twisted. At the front of the room sat a wooden chair facing the desks. Beside it, a rack of carved animal masks hung neatly from hooks. Wolf, owl, fox, deer, each mask polished smooth from repeated use. Psychological conditioning, Mara muttered. He wasn't just hiding them, he was reshaping them. The singing. They heard it deeper in the tunnels. Soft voices drifting through the rock corridors. Children's voices, singing in slow, rehearsed harmony. The melody was unsettling, not childish or playful, but structured, almost ritualistic. Each note landed precisely, as if practiced countless times under strict instruction. The team followed the sound cautiously, moving through another corridor reinforced with fresh timber. The singing grew louder, clearer, until they reached a massive chamber carved directly into the canyon's heart. The sanctuary hall. Mara stepped into the chamber and froze. The space resembled a cathedral built from stone and wood. Lanterns hung from overhead beams, casting flickering golden light across the walls. Rows of benches faced a raised wooden platform at the far end of the hall, and seated in those rows were 7 children. The missing children. They sang softly, their hands folded in their laps, eyes fixed forward toward the platform. Toward him, the caretaker revealed. Elliot Grange stood at the center of the platform. For the first time, he wasn't wearing a mask. He looked older than his renovation photograph, his beard streaked with gray, his eyes sunken but calm. He wore simple work clothes, sleeves rolled neatly to his elbows, as if preparing for a routine day of labor rather than a confrontation with armed officers. He raised one hand slowly. The children stopped singing instantly. Silence fell across the chamber. "Detective Ellison," Grange said calmly, "you've come exactly when I expected." Halvorsen stepped forward, weapon raised. "Elliot Grange, step away from the children and get on the ground." Grange ignored him completely, his attention fixed solely on Mara. "I hoped you would lead them here," he said softly. Mara stepped forward cautiously. "Why me?" she asked. Grange smiled faintly. "Because you understand broken homes. The personal connection." Mara felt her chest tighten. "You've been reading my file," she said. "I've been studying patterns," Grange corrected. "Your father arrested for domestic violence when you were 13. Your mother hospitalized twice. You left home before finishing high school. Mara's hands clenched at her sides, but she didn't respond. You survived chaos, Grange continued. You built structure from trauma. You became exactly what I hoped these children could become. You kidnapped them, Mara said sharply. I rescued them, he replied calmly. The ritual. Grange gestured toward the children. Today is transition day, he explained. They are ready to leave fear behind. Mara glanced toward the children. Their expressions were eerily blank, their posture rigid with conditioned obedience. What does transition mean? She asked. Grange stepped down from the platform slowly. It means permanent separation from the outside world, he said. New identities. New lives. A sanctuary beyond reach. Mara's pulse pounded. You mean you plan to disappear with them? I plan to give them stability, he corrected. The children speak. One of the older girls suddenly stood from her bench. She couldn't have been more than 14. He says families are storms, she said quietly. He says storms destroy homes. Mara turned toward her gently. What's your name? Caroline, the girl whispered. Caroline, do you want to go home? The girl hesitated. Her eyes flicked toward Grange instinctively. Grange nodded reassuringly. You're safe to speak, he told her. Caroline swallowed hard. I don't remember my home, she admitted. The words hit Mara like a physical blow. The hidden explosives. Halvorson's voice crackled quietly through Mara's earpiece. Detective Bomb Squad just detected wiring running beneath the floor. Mara's blood froze. Confirm location, she whispered. Entire chamber, Halvorson replied. Looks like remote detonation. Mara turned back to Grange slowly. You wired this place to explode, she said. Grange nodded calmly. If Sanctuary is threatened, it must not be corrupted by the outside world, he said. You'd kill them. I would free them from chaos. The psychological standoff. Mara stepped closer, lowering her weapon slightly. You don't want them dead, she said quietly. You want them perfect. Grange studied her carefully. You always see deeper than other investigators, he said. You built this because you couldn't save your own family, Mara continued. For the first time, his expression cracked. You know nothing about my family, he said coldly. Your daughter died in a custody battle, Mara said, recalling details from Delgado's overnight research. Your wife took her across state lines. The courts sided with her. And weeks later, your daughter died in a car crash. Silence swallowed the chamber. Grange's hands trembled slightly. The system failed her, he whispered. And you've been trying to rebuild her ever since, Mara said. The final choice. Grange slowly reached into his pocket. Halvorson raised his weapon instantly. Don't move, he shouted. Grange pulled out a small remote device. Mara's heart slammed against her ribs. If I press this, Grange said calmly, the sanctuary remains pure. The children stared at him silently, their faces empty of fear or understanding. Mara stepped forward slowly. Or, you can let them choose their own lives, she said. They will return to broken homes. Some will, Mara admitted. Some won't. But that choice belongs to them. Grange stared at her, conflict raging behind his eyes. You survived your home, he said. Yes, Mara replied. And it made you strong. It made me free, she corrected. The disruption. Suddenly, a small voice broke the silence. Caretaker? It was the youngest boy sitting in the front row. He clutched a worn stuffed bear identical to the ones found in the cabins. Grange looked down at him gently. Yes, Thomas? Are we bad children? The boy asked quietly. Grange froze. No, he said immediately. Then why do we have to hide? Thomas whispered. The question shattered something inside the chamber. Grange's grip on the remote faltered. The collapse. Tears filled Grange's eyes as he stared at the children, his carefully constructed sanctuary unraveling under a single innocent question. Mara stepped closer. You don't need to destroy them to protect them, she said softly. Grange looked at the remote in his hand, then back at the children. Slowly, painfully, he dropped it. Halvorson lunged forward, securing the device while officers rushed the platform. Grange didn't resist as they forced him to his knees and cuffed his wrists. The final words. As officers escorted the children toward the tunnel exit, Grange turned toward Mara one last time. The world will hurt them, he said quietly. Mara met his gaze. Maybe, she said, but it will also give them a chance to heal. Grange nodded slowly. as if acknowledging a truth he never allowed himself to accept. The rising sun. Hours later, the children emerged from the canyon into daylight for the first time in months, some for years. Several shielded their eyes from the sun and used to its brightness. Mara watched as medics wrapped them in blankets and guided them toward waiting ambulances. The singing from the tunnels had stopped. The sanctuary was gone. The sun hung low over Sanctuary Ridge, casting long, jagged shadows across the snow-covered clearing. Detective Mara Ellison stood on the edge of the canyon, watching as survivors were guided into waiting ambulances. Their faces were pale and haunted, yet faint traces of relief glimmered in their eyes. But Mara knew the real work was only beginning, uncovering the full scale. Over the next several days, Hollow Creek police and federal investigators combed every inch of Sanctuary Ridge and the surrounding canyon tunnels. What they found was staggering. Hidden bunkers deep beneath the canyon capable of housing dozens of children. Extensive underground storage rooms filled with carefully cataloged supplies, clothing, food, and even medical kits. Surveillance equipment wired throughout the property, including cameras trained on the tunnel entrances and the surrounding forest. Detailed journals chronicling every child taken from Whispering Pines and nearby towns, with notes on their psychological responses, physical development, and family histories. Mara read through the journals late into the night, the obsessive detail both horrifying and meticulous. Grange hadn't acted on impulse. He had planned decades of abductions, creating a network of underground sanctuaries designed to isolate children from the outside world entirely. It was worse than Mara had imagined, a man who had made kidnapping a methodical, almost bureaucratic practice. The survivors' stories. As the rescued children recovered, many began revealing their stories, and Mara listened, notebook in hand. Lena Corbett, the girl who had survived Whispering Pines, finally began to speak in full sentences, describing the moments of fear, the punishments, and the rare acts of kindness Grange had occasionally allowed. Caroline, the 14-year-old Mara had met in the sanctuary hall, revealed a secret she had kept hidden for years. He sometimes let us send letters to other children, she whispered. But only letters we couldn't send outside, just messages for other rooms. I think he wanted us to communicate, but only on his terms. One boy, Thomas, spoke of the terrifying transition ceremonies, where Grange would sit silently as children repeated rehearsed odes to him. Every revelation made Mara's chest tighten, but one statement chilled her the most. He wasn't alone, Caroline said softly, staring at the ground. He had someone helping him sometimes. Someone older, taller, someone who never spoke, but watched everything. Mara froze. The thought that Grange had accomplices meant this nightmare might extend far beyond the canyon walls. The emotional aftermath. Back at Hollow Creek headquarters, Mara sat alone in her office, staring at the wall filled with photographs of survivors. Coffee had long gone cold. Her hands shook slightly as she processed everything that had happened. She thought of her own childhood, the chaotic household, the nights spent hiding in closets, the fear that had shaped her. I couldn't save them, she whispered to herself. But she had saved some. And that was enough for now. The chilling discovery. 2 days after the raid, forensic analysts uncovered encrypted files on Grange's personal devices. The files were vast, coded communications, travel logs, and photos that hinted at a much larger operation than previously known. One set of emails stood out. They referenced a Project Arbor, a network of abandoned lodges and summer camps across multiple states, all described as sanctuaries in waiting. Even more disturbing, the emails were sent from anonymous addresses signed with initials, EG and AV. Mara's heart skipped. Grange had been working with someone, and that person had remained in the shadows, orchestrating or facilitating abductions behind the scenes. A survivor's hidden message. Late that night, Mara received a call from Lena. She had been reviewing personal notes taken while hiding beneath Whispering Pines. "There's something else," Lena said, her voice trembling. I wrote it down when he wasn't looking. About someone who brought supplies, sometimes a woman. I never saw her face, but she always wore gloves. She called herself the assistant. Mara's blood ran cold. "Do you think she's still helping him?" Mara asked. I don't know," Lena whispered, "but I think she might be watching the news." The aftermath. Despite the horror, Mara allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. She had faced the worst of humanity and lived to see survivors freed. The children she had rescued would now have the chance to grow up outside the shadows of Grange's twisted control. But the lingering truth gnawed at her. Grange had been only one piece of a larger puzzle. Somewhere, in the corners of abandoned camps and quiet forests, someone was still out there, watching, planning, and waiting. Mara clenched her fists. If he or she made a move, she would be ready. And this time, she wouldn't wait until the shadows were already inside the sanctuary. The sun rose higher over Sanctuary Ridge, washing the canyon in golden light. The children were safe, the caretaker in custody, but the story was far from over. The shadows had only shifted. Story 2. It was a cold, misty night when Sarah Mitchell disappeared. Blackwood Road, a winding stretch of asphalt flanked by dense forest, had a reputation among locals. The fog rolled in thick and fast, swallowing headlights and muffling the faintest sounds. Drivers called it the road that eats you alive. Sarah, a 28-year-old nurse, had left her late shift at the hospital. She was tired, but her car never made it home. Her phone pinged one last time, just a few miles from the edge of town, before it went silent. By morning, search parties combed the roadside, but there was no sign of Sarah. No footprints. No abandoned vehicle. Nothing but the fog that seemed to linger longer than nature intended. Detective Owen Hayes, a man known for his meticulous attention to detail, arrived at the scene. He was greeted by officers pointing toward an old abandoned gas station halfway down Blackwood Road. "They say people see shadows there," one officer muttered. "Sometimes cars slow down and never leave." Owen's gaze swept the foggy stretch of road. He could feel it, something was wrong. Too wrong. And he knew, deep in his gut, that this was only the beginning. From the gas station, faint whispers carried on the wind, almost forming words. "Help me!" No one knew whose voice it was, but Detective Hayes was determined to find out. The fog clung to Blackwood Road like a living thing, twisting between the trees and muting every sound except the crunch of Detective Owen Hayes' boots on the frost-hardened gravel. He had spent the night reviewing Sarah Mitchell's last known movements, and the more he examined the timeline, the colder the case became. Her route from the hospital to her apartment shouldn't have taken more than 20 minutes. But her phone pinged at 11:47 p.m., just 3 miles from town, and then nothing. Owen's instincts screamed that someone, or something, had intercepted her. The abandoned gas station. Officers had barricaded the old gas station, a crumbling structure coated with years of graffiti and grime. The place had long been out of business, but locals whispered that it was never truly empty. Some claimed they'd seen figures lurking inside on foggy nights, watching from broken windows. Owen stepped cautiously through the threshold. His flashlight swept across the dusty counters and shattered glass. Then he noticed something odd, a faint set of footprints leading from the gas pumps toward the back storage shed. The footprints were strange, small, deliberate, as if someone had paused to adjust their steps, trying not to leave a trace. He followed them into the shed. The hidden evidence. Inside, Owen found the first clue that made his stomach tighten. A small, battered notebook lay on a crate. Its pages were filled with meticulous handwriting. Sarah Mitchell's name appeared on multiple pages, accompanied by cryptic notes. "She doesn't belong. Must be guided. Observe and wait. Do not intervene. Fog is our ally. Timing is everything." Owen's pulse raced. This wasn't random. Someone had been planning Sarah's disappearance. Then he noticed something carved into the wooden wall beside the crate. A symbol. A circle with a jagged line slicing through the center. Owen's mind flashed. He'd seen similar markings in old missing person reports, patterns stretching back over a decade. This wasn't just a single crime. This was part of something bigger. The pattern emerges. By morning, Owen had compiled a list of disappearances along rural roads within a 50-mile radius of Blackwood. Each victim vanished under strange circumstances. Late at night, often foggy, always near abandoned structures like gas stations, barns, or old lodges. No bodies, no witnesses, just whispers in the mist and symbols left behind. The first victim, 12 years prior, had been a man walking home from a diner. The second, a teenage girl, disappeared outside a motel. And now Sarah Mitchell. Owen's instincts screamed that the killer had evolved, becoming more methodical, leaving breadcrumbs as if daring someone to follow. The witness. Later that day, Owen received a call from dispatch. A woman claimed she had seen Sarah's car parked near Blackwood Road late that night, but something was off. She wasn't alone, the witness said, her voice trembling. A man tall, wearing a hood, guided her like she was following him. Owen scribbled the note down. The witness's sketch was crude but chillingly consistent with other reports from past disappearances. The same tall, hooded figure, faceless in the fog. For the first time, Owen realized he wasn't just chasing a random predator. He was chasing a shadow that had been moving through this region for years, leaving victims in a meticulous trail of fear and silence. The unsettling discovery. As night fell, Owen returned to the gas station to re-examine the shed. He noticed one detail he had missed earlier, a small ventilation grate at floor level. It was partially covered with dust, but faint scratches suggested someone, or something, had passed through it recently. Owen crouched down, shining his flashlight inside. He caught sight of a folded piece of paper wedged in the corner. The fog listens. Do not resist. A chill ran down his spine. This wasn't just a warning, it was a message. Someone was orchestrating these vanishings, and they were aware of who was searching for them. The fog deepened outside, curling through the trees like fingers. And in its silence, Owen felt it. He had just stepped into a game far more dangerous than he had imagined. The question now wasn't just where Sarah Mitchell was, but how many others had already been taken, and how close the shadow was to him. Detective Owen Hayes didn't sleep that night. The fog had settled into Blackwood like a living entity, curling through the trees and swallowing the weak glow of streetlights. Every creak of a branch, every rustle of leaves made him flinch. He pored over the notebook he had found in the abandoned gas station. The cryptic messages, the meticulous handwriting, the ominous warning. The fog listens. Do not resist. It didn't feel like a warning. It felt like a taunt. Owen had been chasing missing persons cases for over a decade, but this was different. Whoever had taken Sarah Mitchell was organized, deliberate, and intelligent. They weren't just committing a crime. They were orchestrating it like a ritual. Morning reconnaissance. By dawn, Owen had returned to Blackwood Road with Officer Jenna Ruiz, a young but sharp patrol officer with a reputation for noticing details most people overlooked. The road was eerily quiet. Trees lined both sides so densely that even the morning light struggled to penetrate. The wind moved through the branches, sounding like whispers. "I don't like this," Jenna muttered, scanning the undergrowth with her flashlight. "It's like the forest is hiding something." Owen nodded. "I've been studying these disappearances. Look for patterns. That's the only way we catch someone like this." They parked near the edge of the last reported sighting. The abandoned gas station sat half a mile ahead, shrouded in fog like a ghost. Dust and moss covered the cracked windows. Broken bottles and graffiti littered the front lot. Owen crouched to examine the soil beneath the pumps. "See this?" he said, pointing to faint tire tracks pressed into the mud. "This isn't recent, but it's not old either. Someone left in a hurry, but carefully. Look how the mud is clumped. He didn't want to leave a trace." Jenna knelt beside him. "Do you think he's still out there?" "Maybe," Owen said. "And that's why we need to be methodical. Whoever this is, he's meticulous. He plans everything down to the last detail. We can't rush." The first physical clue. Owen followed the tracks toward the edge of the forest. The fog was thicker here, twisting through the trees and clinging to the underbrush. It was damp, heavy, and smelled faintly of wet pine. He noticed something odd, small scratches on the bark of several trees along the path, consistent and deliberate, almost like markers. "Symbols," he muttered. "Marking a route." Jenna frowned. "Marking for who?" "Him." Owen shook his head. "For whoever comes after him, or maybe for himself. People like this leave breadcrumbs so they can track their own progress." They continued along the path until they reached a partially hidden clearing. Owen's flashlight caught on something metal half buried in the mud. He knelt and pulled it free, a small, rusted tin box. Inside, carefully folded pieces of paper, some yellowed, others more recent. They were filled with notes, names, and dates. Among them, a list of towns, roads, and times, almost like a travel itinerary. "This isn't random," Owen said. "He's been planning abductions across the state for years." Jenna swallowed hard. Do you think Sarah is on one of these lists? Owen's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. The witness revisited. They returned to town to show the evidence to dispatch, hoping to connect the names and dates to missing persons cases. While there, Owen received a call from the same witness who had seen Sarah with the hooded figure. I think I saw him again last night, the woman whispered. Near the old Miller farm. He was waiting. Owen grabbed his coat. Show us. The Miller farm was just outside town, a decrepit property with a collapsed barn and overgrown fields. It had been abandoned for years. The fog enveloped it completely, as though the land itself didn't want intruders. As they approached the barn, Owen noticed the same circle and line symbol carved into a fence post. His pulse quickened. The pattern was unmistakable, the same markings from the gas station and the notebook. This is him, Owen said. He's been using this property. Inside the barn doors creaked as they pushed them open. Inside, shadows stretched across the old wooden beams. Dust motes floated in the weak light from their flashlights. The air smelled of damp hay and something metallic. Then Owen saw it, a shallow depression in the floorboards, almost like a hatch. He knelt and ran his fingers over the edges. It's a trapdoor, he whispered. Jenna helped him lift it. The hatch revealed a narrow wooden ladder descending into darkness. Owen switched on his helmet-mounted light and climbed down. The ladder ended in a small stone chamber, dimly illuminated by faint red lanterns. The walls were covered in symbols, more circles and jagged lines, repeated over and over. This is his lair, Owen muttered. Or at least one of them. A frightening discovery. Owen's flashlight swept the room. There were crates stacked against the walls, some labeled with children's names, some blank. A small cot in the corner had remnants of blankets and what appeared to be personal items. A stuffed rabbit, a notebook with scribbled letters, a small doll missing an eye. This is where he keeps them, Owen said quietly. His stomach churned. Jenna stepped closer, pointing. Look at this. On the wall above the cot, written in fresh chalk, were words. The fog hides us. Only the prepared survive. Owen felt a chill run down his spine. Whoever this was, he wasn't just hiding victims. He was psychologically manipulating them, training them, preparing them for something. The first lead on Sarah. Owen rifled through the crates and papers. Among the documents, he found a photograph, a car parked at the edge of a forest, headlights on, fog swirling around it. The license plate matched Sarah's car. She was here, Owen whispered, his voice barely audible. He moved her, or she escaped. Or he's keeping her alive. Jenna looked at him. Alive? Owen nodded. That's the only explanation. Whoever this is, he wants control. He doesn't just take lives, he toys with them. Sarah is probably alive for now. The tunnel system. Behind a stack of crates, Owen discovered a narrow passage, barely wide enough to crawl through. The walls were reinforced with timber. It twisted downward, deeper into the earth. This isn't just a hiding place, Owen said. It's a network, tunnels connecting properties, maybe even to other abandoned barns or houses in the county. Jenna swallowed hard. So he's not just on Blackwood Road. He's everywhere. Owen nodded. And that's what makes him so dangerous. He could vanish with victims and leave no trace. We need to map every tunnel, every property connected to him. The first survivor's trail. Owen recalled a survivor from a prior case, an 11-year-old girl who had been found wandering the forest after being abducted. She had spoken of a man in the fog who taught her rules: whisper, obey, never run. He realized something terrifying. This was a repeat offender. He had been doing this for years. And Sarah Mitchell might just be the latest link in a chain spanning over a decade. Owen called the state database, cross-referencing every abandoned property, barn, and forested area within a 50-mile radius of Blackwood Road. The results were staggering. At least 6 sites with missing persons, all within proximity to each other, all with similar symbolic markings. This is bigger than we imagined, Owen muttered. A close encounter. As Owen and Jenna emerged from the barn, the fog had thickened, turning the world into a ghostly gray. Something moved in the trees, a figure tall, hooded, and silent. Freeze! Owen shouted, drawing his weapon. The figure paused, then vanished into the mist. The sound of boots muffled by fog, then nothing. Jenna's hand shook as she lowered her weapon. He's watching us, she whispered. Owen nodded grimly. And he knows we're here. The cryptic map. Back at headquarters, Owen laid out the data on a large map. Pins marked every disappearance, every abandoned property, every symbol recovered. A pattern emerged, a rough line connecting all sites along a corridor from Blackwood to the outskirts of neighboring towns. He circled the tunnels, the barns, the gas stations. Somewhere along this line, Sarah was being held. Somewhere along this line, there was a central lair, a place that might hold more than just one victim. Owen's phone buzzed with an incoming message. It was from the witness who had first seen Sarah being guided by the hooded man. She had returned with a sketch. The drawing showed a large cabin hidden in dense woods, smoke rising from its chimney despite the hour. And in the corner, faintly, the circle and line symbol. Owen stared at the map. This was it. The next location. The place where Sarah, and possibly others, were being kept. The decision. Owen knew the stakes. If they moved too quickly, the victims could be harmed. Too slowly, and the abductor could vanish again, leaving a trail colder than the fog. He turned to Jenna. We go tonight. We move with tactical support, but quietly. No mistakes. We get in, we find Sarah, and anyone else he has taken, and we get out. Jenna nodded. We won't fail. Owen stared once more at the map, tracing the path from the gas station to the cabin in the woods. The fog was already thickening, curling along Blackwood Road like fingers reaching for the next victim. Somewhere in that mist, Sarah Mitchell was waiting. And somewhere, the hooded figure was watching, always watching. Owen swallowed hard, gripping his flashlight. This was the moment it all began. The trail led deeper into darkness, and he would follow it, no matter what he found. Because in the game the abductor played, someone had to win, and Owen had no intention of losing. The fog had grown so thick by nightfall that Blackwood Road seemed to vanish entirely. Detective Owen Hayes and Officer Jenna Ruiz navigated the narrow dirt trail leading into the forest, their headlights cutting through the gray haze in narrow beams. Every step they took felt like sinking deeper into the unknown. Behind them, the tactical team had assembled silently, 5 officers armed and ready, each scanning the surrounding woods with flashlights and rifles. Owen could feel the tension vibrating through the group. This wasn't just another missing person case. This was a predator who had been perfecting his methods for years, and they were stepping into the lair of a man who expected them. Approaching the cabin, through the fog, the sketch from the witness began to take shape. Dark timber walls emerged from the trees, partially hidden by hanging vines and mist. A single wisp of smoke rose from the chimney, curling lazily into the foggy night sky. Stay sharp, Owen whispered, signaling the team to halt. He crouched behind a moss-covered tree, examining the layout. The cabin was small from the outside, but it appeared deceptively simple. Several smaller structures and outbuildings surrounded the main building, almost camouflaged by the forest. Jenna pointed. Look at those tracks, footprints leading to the back of the cabin. Owen nodded. The prints were small but deliberate, careful, someone who knew exactly how to move silently. And they weren't recent, but not old either. They spoke of a predator who had been watching the forest for days. The tactical plan. Owen crouched with the team leader, Sergeant Halvorsen, and outlined the plan in hushed tones. We move in quietly. Entry through the side door is our best option. It's less visible from the main clearing. We stay low, check the perimeter, and then secure the interior. Keep eyes on windows. He may have set traps. Halvorsen nodded. Copy. Everyone knows the protocol. We go slow, methodical. No heroics. Owen's gaze lingered on the cabin. Somewhere inside was Sarah Mitchell, and possibly others. First signs inside. The team approached the side door cautiously. Owen pried it open slowly. It groaned, and the sound seemed deafening in the thick silence of the forest. Inside, the cabin was dimly lit by lanterns, their flickering light casting elongated shadows across wooden floors and walls. Owen's flashlight swept across the room. Tables and chairs were neatly arranged, almost domestic, almost safe. But the air smelled faintly of damp and iron, blood or fear, or both. Check every corner, Owen whispered. Look for movement. As the team fanned out, Jenna discovered the first unsettling clue. A small cot tucked into the corner, with blankets folded and lined with precision. A child's stuffed bear lay on the floor beside it, the stitching frayed and worn. This isn't random, Owen said quietly. He's creating a controlled environment, almost like a prison disguised as a home. The first victim signs. In the back room, they found more disturbing evidence. Several small beds, each paired with a crate labeled with names, some familiar, some unknown. Books, toys, and school supplies arranged meticulously. Owen examined one crate, noticing faint scratches along the inside edge. "He keeps them here," he murmured. "But not just for holding, he's controlling them, training them." The team moved deeper into the cabin, and Owen's flashlight caught movement in the loft above. A faint shadow flitted across the beam. "Up there," he whispered, signaling Halvorsen. Two officers ascended the ladder cautiously. The loft was empty, but it contained journals and scraps of paper, more evidence of meticulous planning. Names, dates, and cryptic notes about children being guided and prepared appeared repeatedly. Owen flipped through one of the journals. They resist at first. Fear is natural. But by the third day, they obey without question. The fog teaches patience. His pulse quickened. This man wasn't just an abductor. He was a manipulator, a teacher of terror. Traps and warnings. As the team investigated the cabin further, Jenna found something peculiar. The floorboards near the back door were slightly raised, almost imperceptibly. "Look at this," she said. "Something's not right." Owen knelt to examine the boards. Beneath, he found wires leading to small, crude explosives, likely designed to deter anyone from pursuing him further. "Booby traps," Owen muttered. "He's prepared for us. He's been here before, and knows we're coming." The tactical team quickly marked the traps, moving them aside cautiously. Every inch of the cabin screamed calculation. Every object had a purpose. The hidden cellar. Behind a stack of crates, Owen discovered another trapdoor, larger and reinforced with metal. It creaked ominously as he opened it, revealing a steep wooden ladder descending into darkness. "Clear," Owen whispered to Halvorsen. "But this is where it starts getting bad." The team descended slowly. The ladder ended in a stone-lined cellar, far bigger than any cellar should have been. Lanterns hung overhead, illuminating rows of cots and small bunk beds. The smell was overwhelming, stale air, damp wood, and something more acrid, something metallic. And then he saw them. The captives, 5 children, ranging in age from 6 to 12, were huddled together in the far corner. Their eyes were wide, terrified, yet oddly quiet. Owen knelt down and spoke softly. "You're safe now. We're here to help you." One of the older girls, maybe 10, trembled as she whispered. He said the fog would protect us, that no one could find us." Owen's heart sank. "You're safe. We're here. I promise." Jenna moved to the corner to comfort the younger ones, wrapping a blanket around a small boy who clutched a worn rabbit doll. Owen scanned the room. The children were alive, but they had been trained, conditioned, perhaps for years. They were fragile, scared, and deeply controlled. Signs of others. As they searched further, Owen noticed evidence of additional victims. Small clothing sizes, leftover toys, and notes referencing other children by name. Some crates were labeled with dates months old. Others were blank. "More than just Sarah," Owen said. "This man has been active a long time. These children, there may be more." Halvorsen approached, examining a wall. "Look at this." Carved into the wood, the familiar circle with a jagged line slicing through it. But this time, beneath it, someone had etched words. "The prepared will guide the lost." Owen swallowed hard. The predator had a philosophy, a twisted ideology. He didn't see himself as a criminal. He saw himself as a guide, a teacher, a protector of children he believed the world had failed. The first encounter. Suddenly, a noise echoed from the loft, a faint scraping, deliberate. Owen froze. "He's here," he whispered. The tactical team moved in formation, flashlights sweeping the cabin. Then, from the back hallway, a figure emerged, tall, hooded, faceless in the dim light. "Police!" Owen shouted, gun raised. "Step away from the children." The figure didn't move. Slowly, methodically, he stepped forward, hands raised, not in surrender, but as if to measure the detectives, to gauge them. "Who are you?" Owen demanded. The hooded man tilted his head slightly. His voice was calm, controlled, almost hypnotic. "You see what the world refuses to see," he said. "I protect what others would destroy." Owen's jaw tightened. "Release the children. Now." The man's gaze swept over the room, landing briefly on each child, then back on Owen. "The prepared must survive," he he said cryptically. "And the lost will learn." Before Owen could react, the figure slipped into a narrow side exit, vanishing into the fog outside, leaving only the echo of his words and the terrified children behind. Aftermath of the encounter. Owen radioed Halvorsen immediately. "He's escaped, but we have the children. Secure the cabin, get medics in here, and start combing the surrounding forest. He may be hiding nearby." Jenna comforted the children, whispering assurances, while Owen examined the escape route. The predator knew the terrain intimately, every tree, every shadow, every fog-laden curve in the path. He had planned for pursuit, and they had walked right into his trap. Owen's mind raced. Sarah Mitchell could be in another cabin, deeper in the woods. Or worse, he could be moving her right now, watching them, waiting. He knew one thing for certain. The game had only just begun. The bigger picture. Back at headquarters, Owen began piecing together everything they had discovered. The gas station, the abandoned barns, the hidden cabin, the tunnels, and now this network of hidden sites. "This isn't a single abductor," he said to Halvorsen. "This is a predator network. He's methodical, trained, and organized. And Sarah Mitchell, she's the latest in a line of victims spanning years, maybe decades." Halvorsen grimaced. "We need to find out how many sites, how many children, and fast." Owen stared at the foggy map, tracing potential escape routes. Somewhere in those trees, the predator waited, planning his next move. And somewhere, Sarah Mitchell's life hung in the balance. The fog watches. Outside, the fog rolled along the forest floor, curling around tree trunks, hiding paths, and swallowing sounds. It was almost alive, almost conscious. Owen knew that in the stillness, the predator was watching them, calculating their next move, leaving subtle breadcrumbs to guide or to trap. This was more than a case. This was a hunt, and the shadow had the home field advantage. Owen clenched his fists. He would follow the trail, no matter where it led, because someone had to save Sarah Mitchell and all the other lost children before the fog claimed them forever. Detective Owen Hayes felt the weight of the forest pressing in on him. The fog was thicker than ever, weaving around the trees and dragging the world into shades of gray. Even the sound of their footsteps seemed muffled, as if the forest itself were conspiring to hide the predator. Behind him, Officer Jenna Ruiz and the tactical team moved silently, rifles raised, flashlights cutting narrow beams through the mist. Every shadow seemed alive. Every rustle of leaves sounded like a warning. Owen paused at a fork in the dirt trail. Both paths were lined with dense undergrowth, branches whipping against their jackets. He consulted the sketch from the witness, the cabin, the escape route, the hidden paths through the forest. "This way," he said, pointing left. "The predator knows these woods. He's guiding us, or trying to mislead us." Following the trail, the path wound sharply down a hill, disappearing into the dense fog. Tire tracks were visible in the mud, recent, deliberate, almost staged. It was as if the predator wanted them to follow, wanted to lure them deeper into his territory. Owen crouched, examining the ground. Footprints, smaller than an adult male. Could be Sarah, or one of the children from the cabin. They might have been forced to walk ahead. Jenna shivered. "Or he's testing us, leaving them as bait." Owen nodded grimly. "Exactly why we stay alert." The forest opened briefly into a small clearing. Owen froze. Fresh footprints led to the center, then vanished into the fog. Next to them, he spotted faint marks in the mud, scratches, symbols identical to the circle and line motif found at the cabin and gas station. "This confirms it," Owen whispered. "He's orchestrating everything, symbolic breadcrumbs tracking our movement." The first confrontation. As they advanced, a figure darted between the trees, tall, hooded, moving like a shadow. Owen raised his weapon, signaling the team to halt. "Stop! Police!" he shouted. The figure paused, seemingly calculating, then sprinted into a thick patch of fog. The tactical team gave chase, flashlights bobbing wildly, rifles raised. But the forest was treacherous, roots, hidden gullies, and the ever-present fog slowed them down. Jenna called out, "He's splitting up. He's trying to separate us." Owen pressed forward, heart pounding. "We don't chase blindly. Move in formation." The figure vanished into the mist, leaving only the faint echo of footsteps and the chilling whisper of a voice carried by the wind. "The prepared survive. The lost are mine." Owen gritted his teeth. The predator was taunting them, playing a psychological game. A hidden lair. Hours into the pursuit, Owen noticed subtle clues along the forest floor. Disturbed moss, faint tire marks, and small, deliberate stone arrangements, almost like trail markers. Following them, the team arrived at a second cabin, smaller than the first, partially camouflaged by thick brush. "This has to be a secondary holding site," Owen said quietly. "He's moving victims between properties." They approached cautiously. The side door was reinforced with metal brackets, an intentional barrier. Owen inspected the perimeter for traps. Tripwires and crude but effective snares had been set to deter anyone who came too close. Halvorsen signaled the bomb squad remotely, while Owen and Jenna carefully opened the door. Inside, the cabin was eerily quiet. Small cots lined the walls, some still warm. Personal items, books, stuffed animals, pencils neatly arranged, showed the children had been here recently. Owen's stomach twisted. This predator was methodical, almost surgical in his approach. Evidence of accomplices. In a back corner, Owen discovered something he hadn't anticipated. A map with several locations marked, all within a 50-mile radius of Blackwood. Next to each location were initials, E.G. and another set, A.V. "Another person," Owen muttered. "He's not working alone." Jenna leaned over his shoulder. "Who is A.V.? Could be an accomplice, a partner, someone who's helping him plan these abductions." Owen's mind raced. If he's coordinated with someone else, these disappearances could extend across multiple counties. We're dealing with a network, not a single criminal. The gravity of the situation pressed down on him. This wasn't a single predator, it was a team, and they had been operating for years, hidden in plain sight. Signs of Sarah. Searching further, Owen found traces that Sarah Mitchell had been here. A torn piece of her scarf caught on a nail, muddy shoe prints matching the size of her sneakers, and a notebook with faint writing in her handwriting. "She's alive," Owen whispered. Relief mingled with dread. "But we have to act fast." He moves his victims quickly. The team secured the cabin and called for medics to check for other potential captives. Each room they entered confirmed Owen's growing suspicion. This network wasn't just about abduction. It was about psychological control, teaching children to obey and internalize fear. The predator's tactics. Owen sat down with the journals recovered from the cabin. The predator had documented everything: children's reactions, timelines, methods of persuasion, and the strategic use of fog as a tool. The fog is both shield and shroud. It isolates them, disorients the unprepared, and reveals only what is necessary. Those who survive are prepared. Those who resist are lost. Owen shivered. This man had studied human behavior meticulously. Every victim had been observed, measured, and manipulated. Sarah wasn't the first, and she might not be the last unless they found the central hub. A survivor speaks. That night, one of the younger children from the first cabin, a boy named Thomas, finally spoke. His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. He takes us when the fog comes," Thomas said. "Says it will hide us. Says we'll learn." Owen knelt to his level. "Do you know where he's taking Sarah?" Thomas shook his head. I don't know, but he has more places. Big ones, with tunnels, dark ones. He likes the dark." Owen's stomach tightened. The predator's reach was broader than they realized. Multiple cabins, underground tunnels, and now, possibly a larger main hideout. Tracking the fog. The next morning, Owen mapped the patterns of the predator's movements. Using tire tracks, footprints, and witness reports, a disturbing picture emerged. The predator moved victims systematically, shifting them between properties along hidden paths, often during heavy fog to conceal activity. "This is his signature," Owen said. "He uses weather, terrain, and psychological manipulation to control the entire operation. He's surgical, almost invisible." Jenna frowned. "So where do we find Sarah? Where does it end?" Owen traced the map with his finger, following the trajectory of past abductions. "There's one property we haven't located, a central hub, a place that connects everything. If we can find it, we can end this network." A dangerous lead. Late that evening, a local informant came forward with a chilling account. "There's an old logging camp deep in the northern woods," the man said. "It's abandoned, but some folks say lights flicker at night. Figures move in the fog. Nobody goes near it, not if they value their lives." Owen's heart sank. The northern woods were dense, almost impassable in places, and the logging camp had been in use for decades. But it fit the pattern, a remote, well-hidden location connected to multiple roads and potential escape routes. "This has to be it," Owen said. "Our predator's central hub. Sarah, all the children, they could be there." Halvorsen nodded grimly. "Then we need a plan. A tactical assault, night or day. We can't risk more lives." A precarious plan. Owen and the team spent hours devising an approach. Satellite imagery and historical maps revealed several hidden paths leading to the logging camp. Some were treacherous, overgrown, and swampy. Others followed old logging trails that could be navigated in fog. Owen outlined the plan. Split the team into 3 units. One to secure the perimeter, one to scout the entrance, and one to enter and locate the victims. Use thermal imaging to detect movement inside the main structure. Approach at dawn to reduce risk while using the fog for concealment. "This is our best chance," Owen said. "We find the hub, we find Sarah, and we stop him before he moves the victims again." A night of tension. That night, Owen barely slept. Images of children in the predator's custody haunted him. Every detail from the cabin and the forest replayed in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that the predator knew exactly where they would strike next. He went over every piece of evidence, every footprint, every symbol. The initials EG and AV kept returning to him. Who was the accomplice? Could they be nearby, observing their approach, preparing a counterattack? The thought chilled him. This was no longer just about one predator. It was about a network, a system, a carefully orchestrated machine of terror. A final revelation before dawn. As Owen reviewed maps for the northern woods, Jenna approached with a folder of reports from missing persons across the past decade. Patterns leapt off the page. Children and young adults, disappearing along foggy roads, near abandoned properties, all connected by symbols and notes. "This is worse than we thought," Jenna said quietly. Owen nodded, staring at the map. "We're not just chasing a predator. We're chasing a legacy of terror." The northern woods loomed on the horizon, dark, misty, and foreboding. Somewhere within, Sarah Mitchell waited, and Owen knew the predator had been preparing for this moment all along. The trap was set, and the fog was ready to swallow anyone who misstepped. Dawn had barely broken when Detective Owen Hayes and the tactical team approached the northern woods. A heavy mist hung between the towering pines, muting the forest sounds and turning every shadow into a potential threat. The abandoned logging camp loomed ahead, partially hidden by overgrown underbrush, its rusted metal roofs glinting faintly in the gray light. Owen's jaw tightened as he studied the perimeter. The predator had prepared this place meticulously, likely anticipating intrusions. Every pathway, every tree, and every building could conceal a trap, or worse. "This is it," Owen whispered. "The central hub. Sarah Mitchell, and all the others are in there. Stay sharp and don't take any chances." Dividing the units. Owen outlined the plan once more. The team split into 3 units. Perimeter team, to secure the outer area, preventing the predator or any accomplices from escaping. Scout team, to check the forest trails for traps, hidden cameras, or false paths. Entry team. Owen led this team to breach the main building and locate the victims. Jenna Ruiz was assigned to the entry team alongside Owen. Her steady nerves and keen attention to detail made her invaluable. "Remember," Owen said, "he's patient. He uses fear and fog to control perception. Trust your instincts and communicate constantly." The team nodded, adjusting night vision goggles and checking equipment. Every heartbeat seemed amplified in the eerie silence of the misty forest. First contact. The entry team moved slowly along a narrow trail, the fog curling around their boots. Owen scanned the trees, his flashlight cutting narrow slices through the gray. Every shadow felt like it could move. Suddenly a faint sound, a twig snapping, echoed from behind a clump of ferns. Owen froze. "Hold," he whispered. A hooded figure darted across the trail, just out of reach. Instinctively, Owen raised his weapon, but the figure vanished into the fog before anyone could react. "He's watching," Jenna whispered, "and he's ready for us." Owen clenched his jaw. "Let's not give him more chances. Stay focused." Entering the camp, the entry team reached the main cabin, its exterior coated in rust, moss, and creeping ivy. The predator had reinforced the doors with metal bars and makeshift locks, but Owen and Halvorsen managed to pry them open quietly. Inside, the air was damp and carried a faint metallic odor. The main room appeared almost domestic, with tables, chairs, and a wood stove, but small details screamed danger. Scratched marks on the floor, symbols carved into the walls, and stray items that didn't belong, like children's shoes and toys. "This is his workspace," Owen said, voice low. "The heart of his operation." They fanned out, flashlights sweeping every corner, rifles ready. Every creak of the old wooden floor made Owen flinch, knowing the predator could be anywhere. First signs of the victims. In the back of the cabin, Owen found a small stairway leading to a hidden basement. The air grew colder and heavier with each step down. Lanterns cast flickering light over rows of cots, crates, and makeshift beds. 5 children huddled in a corner, eyes wide and terrified. They recognized Owen and Jenna from the prior cabin, but they didn't speak. Fear had taught them silence. Owen knelt down. "It's okay. You're safe. We're here to get you out." A girl, perhaps 10, whispered, He said the fog hides us. That no one can reach us." Owen's stomach churned. "The fog isn't protecting you. We are." The team began documenting the scene, securing the children, and checking for signs of other victims. It was clear that this wasn't the first time children had been held here. Crates labeled with names, some months old, indicated a long-running operation. Traps and hazards. As the entry team moved deeper, they encountered the first booby traps. Wires stretched across narrow corridors, attached to improvised alarms and crude mechanisms designed to alert the predator. "Careful," Owen whispered, motioning the team to halt. He used his knife to gently disarm the first trap. Each step was painstaking, each decision critical. A single mistake could cost lives. Jenna examined another corridor. "These aren't just alarms," she said. "They're meant to disorient. Look at how they're positioned, forcing anyone who trips them into corners." Owen nodded grimly. "He's trained for this. He's anticipating our every move." The predator's psychological games. In a side room, Owen discovered a series of journals, videos, and notes detailing previous abductions. Each child had been catalogued meticulously. Reactions to stress, attempts at escape, and methods to break resistance. Fear is the teacher. The fog is the assistant. Those who obey will survive. Those who resist will be lost. Owen shivered. The predator didn't just take children. He trained them, conditioned them, almost like an instructor in a twisted academy of fear. Some journals contained messages addressed to unknown accomplices. Initials matching EG and AV appeared repeatedly, suggesting a network of collaborators operating in the shadows. "This isn't just a man," Owen whispered. "This is a system, an organization built to manipulate and control." A hidden tunnel network. Behind a false wall, Owen discovered the entrance to a tunnel network, narrow, dark, and labyrinthine. The tunnels connected to several other properties and abandoned sites across the county, confirming Owen's worst fear. This predator had been moving victims strategically, creating a hidden infrastructure to evade law enforcement. "They're all connected," Owen said, tracing the map he had created. "Every cabin, barn, and abandoned site is a node. And Sarah, she's somewhere inside this network." Jenna swallowed hard. "How do we find her in all of this?" Owen's eyes narrowed. "We follow the trail, one tunnel at a time. Every mark, every footprint, every symbol leads to her." A dangerous encounter. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed from deeper in the cabin. A heavy door slamming, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. The tactical team froze. Owen signaled everyone to move quietly. Through the foggy corridors, they saw movement, a hooded figure slipping into a hidden stairwell. "Stop!" Owen shouted, raising his weapon. The figure didn't stop. It darted into the shadows, disappearing into the tunnel network. But a crucial clue remained, a scarf caught on a jagged nail. The fabric was unmistakably Sarah Mitchell's. "She's here," Owen whispered, heart pounding. "He's moving her through the tunnels right now." The team quickly regrouped, deciding to follow the tunnel route. The predator had anticipated pursuit, but Owen's determination outweighed fear. Evidence of others. In the basement, Owen discovered more chilling evidence. Photographs of children, some smiling, some terrified, each with notes detailing obedience levels, psychological reactions, and suggested methods of manipulation. This is a catalog, Owen said quietly. He's documenting every victim. He's learning from them. And he's not alone. EG and AV are likely coordinating with him. Jenna shook her head. This is a network of horror. Sarah is just the latest. Owen nodded grimly. And if we don't stop them now, more children will be taken. Mapping the predator's strategy. Using symbols carved into the walls, scratch marks, and tunnel layouts, Owen began mapping the predator's strategy. Every cabin, every corridor, every trap had a purpose. He's creating a maze, Owen said. A controlled environment where he dictates everything. The fog, the tunnels, the symbols, it's all part of the system. And he's using fear as a guide. Jenna looked over his shoulder. Then we have to anticipate him. Outthink him. He's patient, but he's not infallible. Owen nodded. Exactly. And we're going to find Sarah before he realizes we're onto him. A breakthrough clue. As they traced the tunnels, Owen noticed a symbol carved into the wall. A circle with a jagged line, but this one had arrows pointing north. This is a guide, Owen said. He wants movement in a certain direction. And it's not random. It leads to the main hub. Sarah is likely being moved there. The team followed the arrows deeper into the tunnels, descending into darkness. The air grew colder, denser, and the faint sound of running water echoed off stone walls. This is it, Owen whispered. The heart of the network. If Sarah's alive, she's here. And if we move carefully, we can get her out. The tension builds. The tunnels twisted and turned, narrow passages forcing the team to move in single file. Every sound, drip of water, distant scraping, soft whisper, set their nerves on edge. Finally, they reached a wider chamber. Lanterns hung from the ceiling, casting dim, flickering light over cots and crates. And there in the far corner, Owen saw her, Sarah Mitchell, alive, huddled against the wall, eyes wide with terror. Sarah, Owen whispered urgently. It's okay, we're here. You're safe. She flinched at first, then recognition dawned. Relief washed over her face, but the fear remained, a fear born of weeks of captivity and control. The predator's escape. Before Owen could secure Sarah, a shadow passed through the corridor leading deeper into the tunnel network. The predator had anticipated their arrival and slipped away once again, vanishing into the maze. He's still out there, Owen muttered, frustration and anger mixing with relief. But at least we've got Sarah. Jenna wrapped a blanket around the shaken woman. She's alive. That's what matters. Owen nodded, but his mind raced. The tunnels extended far beyond the site. The predator had multiple escape routes, and possibly more accomplices. The fog watches. As dawn broke, the fog began to lift, but its presence still clung to the forest like a silent observer. Owen knew the predator was out there, somewhere watching, waiting, calculating. The first major step had been taken. They had rescued Sarah, secured evidence, and uncovered the tunnels, but the battle was far from over. Owen stared into the thinning mist. The map of the predator's network spread before him. Somewhere along these trails, more victims remained, and the true scale of the operation was still hidden. One thing was certain. The predator had underestimated Owen Hayes, and he would pay the price for his arrogance. The hunt was far from over. Detective Owen Hayes stood at the edge of the northern woods, staring into the dense fog that had swallowed the logging camp. The early morning sun did little to penetrate the gray haze, leaving the forest a cold, silent maze. Sarah Mitchell had been rescued, but Owen's mind was already racing ahead. EG and AV, the predator's possible accomplices, were still at large, and the network of abductions stretched farther than anyone had imagined. Sir, Jenna Ruiz said, breaking his focus, we need to figure out our next move. The predator isn't done yet. He knows we've seen his tunnels, his cabins. He's probably watching, waiting. Owen nodded. He's patient, and so is his network. But patience has a weakness, overconfidence. If we map his routes, track his moves, we can corner him and his accomplices. We just have to be methodical. A growing network. Back at headquarters, Owen spread the map of missing persons, abandoned properties, and tunnels across the table. The symbols carved into trees and walls were plotted alongside dates and witness reports. Look at this, Owen said, pointing. It's not random. The predator and his accomplices are operating like a web. Each site connects to another, creating a network. Sarah was just one node. There are more, and each has victims. Jenna studied the map. This is organized, almost like a supply chain. He's efficient. And these initials, EG and AV, they're everywhere. Owen's jaw tightened. Exactly. Whoever they are, they're not just helping, they're essential to the operation. We need to find them before anyone else disappears. The first lead on EG. Owen traced the initials EG across multiple locations on the map. One property stood out, a dilapidated farmhouse 5 miles east of Blackwood Road. It had been reported abandoned for years, but witness accounts hinted at occasional activity. We'll start there, Owen said. It's likely a staging area. If EG is coordinating with the predator, this is where we'll find evidence. The tactical team geared up and moved cautiously down the narrow roads, the fog curling around them like a living entity. Every rustle of leaves and distant caw of a crow made nerves tighten. When they arrived at the farmhouse, it was eerily silent. Broken windows gaped like empty eyes, and the porch sagged under years of neglect. Owen signaled the team to approach quietly. Evidence of movement. Inside, the farmhouse was a labyrinth of clutter, dust, and decay. But subtle signs hinted at recent activity. Footprints in the dirt, smudged handprints on window sills, and a trail of small items, shoes, a notebook, a child's toy, leading to the back shed. This is active, Owen muttered. Not abandoned at all. Someone's using it as a secondary site. Jenna crouched to inspect a crate partially hidden under a tarp. Inside, she found journals and handwritten notes detailing movements of children, coded messages referencing cabins and tunnels, and maps marked with cryptic symbols. He's tracking victims, moving them according to some schedule, Jenna said, voice low. And look at this, these initials again, EG and AV coordinating every detail. Owen felt a chill. They're organized. This is a network, not a single predator. And we're just starting to uncover it. A hidden passage. Behind the farmhouse, Owen discovered a partially concealed hatch leading to a narrow tunnel. The entrance had been reinforced with timber and partially camouflaged with dirt and leaves. Could be a direct connection to the main network, Owen said. We follow this, and we might find the path the predator uses to move victims. The team descended carefully. The tunnel walls were lined with faint scratch marks, symbols repeating at regular intervals. Owen realized this was more than a hiding place. It was a controlled route, guiding movement like a psychological roadmap. This is incredible and terrifying, Jenna whispered. He's controlling not just the victims, but anyone who enters here. Owen nodded grimly. And he's expecting us. Every step we take is being anticipated. The first trap. As they moved deeper into the tunnel, a faint click echoed. Owen froze. A wire stretched across the corridor, almost invisible in the dim light, connected to a small device. Tripwire, Owen muttered. He's testing our attention. Jenna carefully disarmed it with a tactical knife. This is deliberate, she said. He's teaching us lessons through fear, just like he does with the children. Owen's pulse quickened. This predator wasn't just clever. He was surgical, using psychological tactics to manipulate everyone who entered his domain. A chilling discovery. At the tunnel's end, they emerged into a small clearing where another cabin stood. This one was fortified, with multiple locks and barricades. The faint smell of damp and iron hung in the air. Inside, they found evidence of recent occupation. Small beds, crates labeled with names, and personal items left in meticulous order. And then Owen noticed a wall lined with photographs. Children, some smiling, some terrified, all labeled with dates and initials. This is the web, Owen whispered. Each photo, each note, each symbol. It's a record of control. He's documenting every move, every reaction, every fear. Jenna's eyes widened. There could be dozens of victims here. We need to get this evidence out, but carefully. The predator might still be near. Signs of accomplices. Owen's flashlight caught movement in a loft above. 2 figures darted between shadows, quick, deliberate, almost ghost-like. He signaled the team to hold. Accomplices, he whispered. EG and AV. They're here, and they know we're coming. The figures vanished into hidden exits before anyone could approach, leaving behind only faint whispers and the sense of being watched. Owen's jaw tightened. They're coordinated. We need to be smarter, faster. They won't stop, and neither can we. Following the trail, using the scratch marks, symbols, and faint footprints, Owen and the team traced a path leading deeper into the forest. Every step confirmed the predator's meticulous planning. Tunnels connecting cabins, forest paths mapped with symbols, and hidden markers guiding movement. "This isn't just a network," Owen said quietly. "It's a system designed to evade law enforcement." He's been at this for years, moving victims and avoiding capture with precision. Jenna shivered. "And Sarah, she's still part of this system. He could move her again at any moment." Owen nodded. "Which means we need to find the final hub. That's where he centralizes operations, and where we'll have a chance to stop him permanently." The psychological trap. As they advanced, the predator left messages, chalk symbols on trees, small notes, and even items meant to distract or confuse. One note, nailed to a tree, read, "The fog teaches patience. Those who rush will falter." Owen's stomach tightened. This wasn't just physical, it was psychological. The predator was manipulating the team the same way he had trained his victims, instilling fear, uncertainty, and doubt. "We have to stay sharp," Owen said, voice low. "Every distraction is a test. He's seeing how we react. Don't give him that control." A hidden cabin with survivors. Hours later, they discovered another cabin, smaller and more secluded than the others. Inside, they found 3 children, huddled together, frightened but alive. The children recognized Owen from the previous rescues and cautiously stepped forward, trusting him in the foggy darkness. "This confirms it," Owen said softly. "The network is larger than we thought, and every cabin, every tunnel is connected." Jenna examined the walls and floors. "The predator is everywhere. He's literally controlling the entire forest. And these children, they've been moved systematically." Owen's jaw tightened. "Which means Sarah, she's likely being moved along the same routes. The final hub is somewhere beyond this. And we're running out of time." A breakthrough clue. One of the rescued children whispered about a place where the trees meet the stones, describing a clearing near a rock formation with signs carved into the boulders. Owen realized this could be the predator's central hub, the place from which all operations were coordinated. "This is it," Owen said. "If we follow the children's memory, we can find the source, the hub, the heart of the operation." Halvorsen nodded. "Then we move carefully. No mistakes. We locate the hub, find Sarah, and end this network." Preparing for the final push. The team mapped the route to the rock formation clearing, noting all tunnels, cabins, and forest paths along the way. Every detail mattered. The predator had left subtle markers to guide, or mislead, any intruders. "This is it," Owen said, voice steady despite the tension. "The final stretch. The hub. Sarah and the other victims are there, and we're taking it back." Jenna checked equipment one last time. "We're ready. We follow the map, stay sharp, and trust each other. That's our only chance." Owen nodded. "The predator has underestimated us for the last time. We move now, and we bring everyone home." The fog's final test. As the team advanced toward the clearing, the fog thickened again, almost as if it were alive. Every sound echoed, every shadow stretched unnaturally. The predator had turned the forest into a psychological trap, designed to confuse, intimidate, and disorient. Owen's pulse quickened. He knew that in the heart of this fog, the predator awaited, patient, calculated, and ready. But Owen had one advantage: determination. He would follow the path, decipher the clues, and end the network of terror that had haunted Blackwood for years. Somewhere in the clearing, the final confrontation was waiting. And somewhere, Sarah Mitchell's life, and the lives of countless other victims, hung in the balance. The fog thickened as Detective Owen Hayes led the tactical team through the forest toward the predator's final clearing, the so-called hub of operations. The morning light struggled to penetrate the dense gray mist, leaving every tree, every rock, every shadow a potential threat. The silence was heavy, punctuated only by the occasional snapping of twigs underfoot. Owen glanced at his team. Jenna Ruiz walked beside him, eyes scanning every movement, every potential hiding place. Halvorsen and the other officers fanned out, their rifles raised, flashlights cutting narrow paths through the fog. Every nerve was taut, every heartbeat felt like it echoed through the forest. "This is it," Owen whispered. "The final stretch. The predator is here somewhere. And if he's as methodical as we think, he's prepared for us. Every move we make, every sound we make, he's already accounted for." The clearing appears. Through the fog, a break in the trees revealed the clearing. Large boulders jutted out of the earth, partially covered with moss and carved with cryptic symbols, the same jagged circle and line patterns found at the previous cabins. The predator had left a clear marker, almost as if daring them to enter. "This has to be it," Owen muttered. "The central hub. Everything leads here." The clearing was littered with debris, old crates, rusted barrels, and remnants of makeshift structures. Footprints in the mud indicated recent movement. Owen crouched, inspecting them closely. "They're fresh," he said quietly. "Someone, possibly the predator, was here in the last few hours. And Sarah, she could be anywhere within these boulders or the hidden structures." Jenna nodded. "He's not just hiding, he's preparing. The fog is his advantage. He knows these woods like the back of his hand." Initial reconnaissance. Owen signaled for Halvorson's unit to secure the perimeter. "We move slow. No mistakes. Keep eyes on every shadow, every crevice." Two officers approached a partially camouflaged shed at the edge of the clearing. Inside, they found a small room with cots, crates, and faint evidence of children, recently moved. The scent of damp and iron hung heavy in the air. "This is it," Owen whispered. "The predator has consolidated his victims here. This is where the network converges." Jenna scanned the surrounding trees. "And if he has accomplices, they're likely watching from above, in the trees, or hidden in the boulders. He's orchestrating every detail, even this clearing." Owen's jaw tightened. "Then we approach cautiously. No heroics. Step by step, methodical. That's how we get everyone out alive. Traps and psychological warfare." As they moved deeper into the clearing, Owen noticed subtle traps. Wires stretched between trees, snares along narrow pathways, and tripwires attached to small devices that could startle or injure anyone who triggered them. "Careful," Owen whispered. "He wants to slow us, distract us. That's part of his system. He uses fear as a guide." Jenna carefully disarmed a wire trap, revealing a set of small lanterns hanging from the branches. The lanterns cast eerie, flickering light, designed to disorient anyone moving through the fog. "He's using shadows and light to confuse us," Owen said. "He's creating an environment like the one he keeps his victims in, controlled chaos, fear, and uncertainty." The team moved slowly, step by step, dismantling each trap as they advanced toward the center of the clearing. The hidden tunnel entrance. At the base of a large boulder, Owen found a partially concealed hatch leading underground. The predator had reinforced the entrance with heavy timber and camouflaged it with moss and leaves. "This has to be it," Owen said. "The main hub, the heart of the operation, is below us." The team prepared to descend. Owen checked his equipment, his flashlight cutting a narrow beam into the darkness. Jenna followed closely, while Halvorson covered the entrance. The rest of the team fanned out along the perimeter, ready to intercept any accomplices. As they descended, the temperature dropped sharply. The air grew damp and heavy, carrying the faint metallic scent of blood. The narrow tunnel twisted and turned, leading to a larger subterranean chamber. The central chamber. The chamber was massive, carved into the rock and reinforced with wooden beams. Lanterns hung from the ceiling, casting flickering light over rows of cots, crates, and makeshift cells. Evidence of long-term occupation was everywhere. Children's clothing, toys, notebooks, and journals meticulously arranged. Owen's heart sank as he saw the first signs of the predator's victims. Some children were huddled together, silent, traumatized, but alive. Others had left marks on the walls, signs of resistance and fear. "This is his kingdom," Owen whispered. "Everything he's built, every victim, every plan, it's all here." Jenna approached a young girl who flinched at the flashlight. "It's okay," Jenna said softly. "We're here to help you." The girl's eyes widened as recognition dawned. Relief mixed with fear, the same pattern Owen had seen in previous rescues. The first confrontation. Suddenly a shadow moved across the chamber, tall, hooded, faceless in the flickering light. The predator had anticipated their arrival, hiding within the labyrinth of tunnels. "Freeze!" Owen shouted, raising his weapon. The predator did not move in fear. Instead, he circled slowly, almost measuring them, calculating their reactions. His voice was calm, precise, and chilling. "You think you've cornered me," he said, his words echoing in the chamber. "But the fog watches. The network endures. Those who follow blindly get lost." Owen's jaw tightened. "Release the children." Now, the predator paused, then disappeared through a hidden passage at the far end of the chamber. His escape was silent, deliberate. "He's planning something," Owen muttered. "We need to stay focused. The children first. Then we find him." Evidence of the network. As the team secured the chamber, Owen examined the journals, photographs, and notes left behind. The predator had documented every victim, reactions, psychological manipulation techniques, and the network's operations. EG and AV's names appeared repeatedly, confirming that the predator had active accomplices. Some notes suggested that these accomplices were responsible for moving victims, setting traps, and maintaining the tunnels. "This isn't just a man," Owen said quietly. "It's an entire system, and the reach, it's larger than we imagined." Jenna studied the maps. There could be dozens more victims. Each location connected, each cabin a node. "We're only scratching the surface." Owen nodded. "Which means we have to move fast. We secure the hub, rescue everyone here, and then dismantle the network." Rescuing the victims. The team worked methodically, checking each cell, comforting the children, and marking evidence for removal. Sarah Mitchell was reunited with the other rescued children from previous cabins, and medics attended to those who were injured or malnourished. Owen noticed patterns in the victims' trauma. Children had been psychologically conditioned to obey, to fear, and to remain silent. The predator's methods were systematic, calculated, and horrifying. "They're trained to survive," Owen whispered. "But they've been broken, controlled, and manipulated. We have to undo that." Jenna nodded. "It'll take time, but they're alive. That's what matters now." Tracking the predator. With the victims secured, Owen focused on the predator. Using the journals, scratch marks, and symbols, he began tracing potential escape routes within the tunnel network. "He knows every path," Owen said. "Every hidden exit, every shortcut. But we have evidence now. We can anticipate him." Halvorsen checked communications with the perimeter team. "No sightings yet, but the fog is dense. He could be anywhere." Owen clenched his fists. "Then we follow the trail. And this time we end it." A sinister discovery. As they prepared to leave the central chamber, Owen noticed a hidden compartment behind one of the walls. Inside were files, photographs, and notes that chilled him to the bone. Locations of previous abductions spanning multiple counties, detailed plans for future victims, and cryptic messages suggesting that the predator had allies in towns outside Blackwood. "This is bigger than we thought," Owen said grimly. "He's not just a local predator. He has a network, coordinated, planned, and operational across state lines." Jenna's voice was tight. "We're dealing with a criminal organization, not a single man." And Sarah, she was just the latest. Owen nodded. "Which means dismantling this network won't end with capturing him. We have to find every accomplice, every safe house, every victim. And we have to do it fast." The fog lifts. Slightly. As dawn broke, the fog began to lift slightly, revealing the clearing in more detail. The predator had vanished into the tunnels, but Owen knew he had left a trail. Every symbol, every scratch, every note was a breadcrumb. The tactical team regrouped, rescuing the last few children and marking the chamber for forensic analysis. The central hub had been secured, the victims rescued, and evidence collected, but the predator remained at large, and the network's full scale was only beginning to emerge. Owen stared into the thinning mist. Somewhere in the forest, the predator and his accomplices were watching, waiting, calculating. But for the first time, Owen felt a sense of purpose. The web of terror was unraveling, and he was determined to pull every thread. "The hunt isn't over," Owen said quietly, "but we've taken the first major step. The network is vulnerable now, and we're coming for every last one of them." The fog clung to the trees like a living entity, but Owen Hayes was ready. The heart of the predator's operation had been exposed, and the chase was about to enter its final, most dangerous phase. The northern woods were quieter than usual, but Owen Hayes knew better than to trust silence. The predator and his network were patient, calculating, and relentless. After securing the central hub and rescuing the majority of victims, Owen now faced the most dangerous phase of the investigation, dismantling the predator's network and confronting the accomplices who had helped him operate in the shadows. Jenna Ruiz, standing beside Owen, glanced at the map sprawled across the tailgate of their vehicle. Each mark represented a cabin, a tunnel, or a site where victims had been held. The initials EG and AV appeared repeatedly, connecting multiple nodes in a web of abduction and manipulation. "We've got most of the children accounted for," Jenna said, voice tight. "But if EG and AV are still at large, the network isn't finished. They're the keys." Owen nodded, eyes scanning the fog-draped trees. "We dismantle the network piece by piece. Each cabin, each tunnel, each accomplice. Step by step, we make it impossible for them to operate. And when we find AV, we get answers." The hunt for AV. Using the Predator's maps, journals, and symbols, Owen traced a potential safe house for AV deep in the eastern woods. According to notes recovered from the central hub, this property had been used to coordinate movements, store equipment, and temporarily hold victims. The approach was treacherous. Overgrown trails and thick fog concealed pits, tripwires, and other traps designed to slow pursuers. Owen led the team slowly, flashlights slicing through the mist. Every rustle of leaves and snapping of branches made hearts pound. "This has to be it," Owen muttered, crouching behind a fallen log. The structure ahead was small, fortified with plywood and metal bars. Smoke from a recently extinguished fire curled into the fog, evidence of recent occupation. Jenna nodded. "He's here, or he was very recently. We need to move carefully." Securing the perimeter, Owen divided the team into 2 units. One unit would secure the perimeter, cutting off potential escape routes. The other, led by Owen and Jenna, would enter the building to confront AV. The forest around the property was unnerving. Every tree seemed like a potential hiding place. Shadows shifted unnaturally in the fog, and small, intentional markers left by the Predator and his accomplices guided, or misled, anyone approaching. "Remember," Owen whispered to his team, "this is psychological warfare. Expect traps, distractions, and deception. Focus on the goal, AV, evidence, and securing any victims inside." Entering the safe house, the entry team approached the side door, carefully inspecting the hinges and floor for traps. Owen signaled Jenna to move in first. She lifted the door quietly, revealing a dimly lit interior. Inside, the room was cluttered with crates, old furniture, and a few scattered personal items, some belonging to victims. Footprints in the dirt indicated recent movement. Owen motioned for the team to advance slowly. In a corner, a figure moved, hunched, quick, and alert. It was AV, one of the Predator's accomplices. "Police!" Owen shouted. "Stay where you are." AV froze for a moment, then bolted toward a hidden hatch in the floor. Owen pursued, signaling the team to block escape routes. The chase led to a narrow tunnel beneath the safe house. The walls were lined with symbols and markings, designed to disorient intruders. AV moved quickly, but Owen followed with methodical precision, aware that a single mistake could cost him lives. Confrontation in the tunnel. The tunnel widened into a small chamber. AV turned to face them, panic flashing in their eyes. "Don't move," Owen shouted, raising his weapon. AV's voice trembled. I didn't mean it's all. He made us do it." Owen stepped closer. "Explain. Now. Every victim, every cabin, every tunnel. How far does this go?" AV swallowed, voice barely audible. It's everywhere. Cabins, tunnels, abandoned properties. He uses us to move them, to hide them, to control them. And EG, he's even worse. He planned the logistics, the coordination. He's the master. The fog is his shield." Owen's jaw tightened. "Where are the others? The remaining victims?" AV hesitated, then gestured to a hidden wall panel revealing a series of tunnels marked with dates and initials. They're still there. Some haven't been moved yet. Some maybe in the eastern tunnels near Blackwood Creek. That's where he plans the next move, rescuing the remaining victims. With AV in custody, Owen directed the team to the eastern tunnels. Each passage was more complex and deceptive than the last, lined with traps and psychological markers intended to confuse pursuers. The team moved cautiously, disarming snares and following symbols etched into walls. In small, hidden chambers, they discovered several more victims, children and young adults, frightened but alive. Some had been isolated for weeks, and the trauma was evident in their demeanor. Owen knelt beside a young boy, reassuring him. "You're safe now. We've got you." The boy nodded, clutching a tattered toy, eyes wide with disbelief. They said the fog would hide us. Owen's stomach twisted. It didn't. We're here now, and you're coming home. A glimpse of the predator. As the team advanced, Owen spotted movement ahead, another figure slipping between shadows in the fog. The predator had anticipated their actions, using the tunnels to stay ahead, to control the narrative, and to remain untouchable. Don't lose focus, Owen whispered. He's trying to distract us. We get the victims first. We'll get him next. The fog thickened, almost as if it were alive, echoing the predator's presence. Every step felt like walking through a living maze, each turn designed to unnerve and confuse. Uncovering the full scale. In a hidden chamber deep in the eastern tunnels, Owen discovered evidence that confirmed the network's horrifying scale. Hundreds of photographs, journals, and coded notes documenting every victim's reactions, movements, and compliance. Maps showed multiple counties, dozens of cabins, and a network of tunnels, all meticulously coordinated. This isn't just a man, it's an entire system, Owen said quietly. EG and AV are just part of it. There are more. And the predator isn't just hiding, he's orchestrating an empire of fear. Jenna shook her head. And Sarah, she was just one piece of it. There are more children, more victims, still trapped. Owen nodded grimly. Which means we keep going. We trace every tunnel, every cabin, every symbol. No one is left behind. The psychological toll. As the team moved, the children's trauma became increasingly evident. Some refused to speak, while others displayed signs of extreme fear and mistrust. The predator's methods, control, isolation, fear, had left deep psychological scars. Owen took a moment to speak to one of the teenagers rescued from a previous cabin. You're safe now. Nothing he can do will control you anymore. The girl looked at him, tears in her eyes. He made us obey. Even when we wanted to fight, we couldn't. Owen's chest tightened. You can fight now. You're free. And we'll make sure no one else suffers like this. AV's confession. With AV secured and the remaining victims found, Owen interrogated the accomplice further. Who else is involved? Owen demanded. AV hesitated, then spoke in a trembling voice. There's a network. EG coordinates logistics, like I said. But there are others. People in towns, in communities watching, reporting, helping him avoid detection. He's not alone. The fog, it hides more than him. It hides everyone working with him. Owen's eyes narrowed. Names. Locations. Every detail you have, I need now. AV nodded slowly. I can tell you. But he'll know if I speak. He's everywhere. The weight of the revelation hit Owen. The predator wasn't just a single mastermind. He had collaborators embedded in multiple communities, a support system allowing him to operate undetected for years. Planning the final confrontation, Owen and his team regrouped near the last known tunnel exit. With AV's information, they mapped out the predator's network fully, identifying potential hideouts, safe houses, and escape routes. We know where he is now, Owen said firmly. And this time we corner him. No more escapes. No more victims. We end this network, starting with him. Jenna checked the tactical gear. It won't be easy. He's prepared for everything we've seen. The fog, the traps, the psychological games, he'll use it all against us. Owen's gaze hardened. Let him. We're ready. We have the map, the evidence, the team, and the victims. He won't anticipate that. The calm before the storm. As night fell, the fog returned, thick and almost suffocating. The forest seemed alive with anticipation. Every rustle, every shadow, every distant sound set the team on edge. Owen surveyed the perimeter, ensuring all units were in position. Medics attended to the rescued victims, while tactical teams secured all known exits. The predator had one last chance to escape. Owen's voice was calm but resolute. Tonight, we confront him. Tonight, we end this network of terror. The fog may hide him, but it won't hide the truth. And it won't hide justice. For the first time, Owen felt the final confrontation was near. The web of shadows was unraveling, and the predator's carefully orchestrated empire of fear was about to collapse. Somewhere in the fog, the predator waited, unaware that every step he had taken had led Owen Hayes and his team directly to him. The final showdown was inevitable. The northern woods were unnervingly quiet as Detective Owen Hayes and his team moved cautiously toward the predator's final known stronghold. After weeks of tracking, rescuing victims, and dismantling parts of the network, they now faced the operation's heart. The fog, once a shield for the predator, seemed to hang like a gray veil over the clearing, muting sound and swallowing shadows. Owen glanced at the team. Jenna Ruiz stood beside him, her eyes sharp, every muscle tense. Halvorsen adjusted his flashlight and rifle. Every officer knew this would be the confrontation that decided the entire investigation. Every step forward could be their last, or the predator's final escape. "This is it," Owen whispered. "Every victim, every clue, every trap leads here. He can't escape now. Not after everything we've uncovered." Entering the central hub, the clearing revealed the predator's ultimate structure, a ramshackle lodge, partially camouflaged, reinforced with steel and wood. Smoke curled from a chimney, faint but recent. Footprints indicated movement. He was still here, still hiding, still orchestrating his operation. Owen motioned for the team to fan out. Tactical units moved silently around the perimeter, securing every potential escape route, while Owen and Jenna approached the main entrance. Inside, the lodge smelled of damp wood and iron. Lanterns flickered, casting shadows across walls lined with photographs, journals, and maps marking every victim, every tunnel, every cabin. The predator had documented everything meticulously, a record of years of calculated terror. "This is the hub," Owen muttered. "The command center for everything he's done. And he's still here somewhere." Jenna surveyed the room. "And every item here is evidence. But we have to move carefully. He's likely set traps or alarms." The victims' testimonies. In a back room, some of the recently rescued children and young adults huddled together, still trembling from weeks or months of captivity. Their eyes widened as they saw Owen and Jenna. "You're safe now," Owen said gently, kneeling to meet a young boy's gaze. "No one can hurt you here." The boy clutched a worn toy. They said the fog hides us, and that no one could find us." Owen nodded. "The fog didn't hide you. We did. And we're taking you home." One of the older teenagers stepped forward, her hands shaking. He had people. Not just him. Others. Watching. Helping. Owen's heart sank. "We know. That's why we're here. We're ending it. All of it." Uncovering the full scale. Owen and the team began examining the lodge, uncovering evidence that confirmed the predator's operation was far larger than anyone had imagined. Hidden compartments contained documents detailing abductions across counties, coded communications with accomplices, and lists of potential future victims. "These aren't isolated incidents," Owen said grimly. "This is an entire network. He's not alone. E.g. AV and others are all involved, people embedded in communities, helping him stay hidden." Jenna's voice was tight, and every victim was catalogued, tracked, controlled. Owen clenched his fists. "Which means dismantling this network isn't over yet. But the heart of it, the predator, is in front of us. And this time we end him." The confrontation. From the shadows of the lodge, a figure emerged, tall, hooded, movements deliberate. The predator himself, calm, collected, almost serene in the chaos of the lodge. "Detective Hayes," he said, voice smooth, controlled. "You've come far, but not far enough. The fog protects me. The network is bigger than you know. Even if I fall, others will rise." Owen stepped forward, weapon raised. "Release every victim. Now." "Hello everyone. It's over. I'm here to help you relax." The predator's lips twisted into a faint smile. "I know many of you use this. Over? Video to fall asleep. Maybe. But the fog before watches. You get cozy, and those who obey the fog will continue my work. Subscribe to the channel." Before Owen could react, also, let me know where you're watching to a hidden tunnel, what time it is there. I'd love to give chase, following him into a labyrinthine network of passageways. The lighthouse on Blackshore traps had been psychological markers designed to confuse. But every 7 years, the chase turned on by itself. The tunnels twisted and turned. No caretaker, sometimes narrowing into no explanation passages, and every time its light returned, loose floorboards, someone from the nearby snares slowed the team, but did not stop them. Owen's experience with the network allowed him to anticipate without the predator's movement. Winds screamed across the jagged fear as a weapon. Blackshore Owen whispered to Jen. Crashing waves slammed against the rocks below. It's all part of rain fell sideways. Don't let it dictate the horizon between ocean and sky. Stay focused. Detective Rowan Hale, predator paused briefly as she stepped out of her vehicle with a shadowy Blackshore police barricade. But Owen and the team, the air smelled of salt, moving systematically, Emergency lights reflected off puddles scattered across the cracked coastal road. The capture of the predator. She had transferred to Blackshore only 3 weeks earlier, opened into a massive quiet coastal cases. Crates, smuggling, theft, and makeshift cells were arranged in a deliberate, almost ceremonial order. She had arrived on the night the predator stood at the center, arms raised as if challenging the team. She turned to see Sheriff Marcus stepping forward. He was tall, broad-shouldered, no more victims, and carried the exhaustion of someone who had seen the same nightmare too many times. The predator's eyes glinted in the dim light. You picked a bad week to arrive. You think this ends with me? Owen tightened his past him. It ends tonight. With precise coordination, perched at the edge of a jagged cliff like a skeletal finger, he struggled briefly. The storm was overpowered. Its white stone tower was cracked. He finally allowed himself partially collapsed near the top. The emotional aftermath. The metal railing spiraling around its exterior. The rescued victims were reunited with loved ones. But the light, relief, the rotating beam of pale yellow illumination sliced through the storm. Owen watched as families embraced children sweeping across the ocean as if guided by an unseen Jenna approached Owen. Rowan frowned. It's over, isn't it? There's power running to it? Owen shook his head slowly. She asked. For now, Bell shook his head but slowly. The network, the scale power lines were cut. We have to follow every lead, dismantle every safe house. Generators removed. Justice doesn't wiring stripped. Meanwhile, that tower survivors began revealing secrets they had kept buried. Rowan watched the beam rotate manipulation, illuminating the furious ocean. Each story added another piece to the puzzle. Bell didn't answer immediately, helping authorities understand the predator's methods. He handed her a thin folder, and the network's edges frayed with age. A chilling discovery, because every time that investigators cataloged evidence in the lodge, someone disappeared. Owen discovered a hidden room containing communications. They stood inside the sheriff's temporary photographs that suggested the predator had accomplices beyond. Officers moved nervously outside. People embedded in towns, search teams preparing, even law enforcement quietly enabling the operation. Rowan flipped through the This isn't just a single predator 7 names or a pair of accomplices. 7 years Owen apart. Said quietly. 1977, Jenna. 1984. This is a network. 1991. He's been running it for years. 1990. Jenna's eyes widened. 2005. And some people we 2012 were helping him. 2019. Owen nodded grimly. Each entry had one thing in common, and that's why dismantling the network will take suspects. Time. But at least the central figure, and tonight marked the 7th year since the fog has lifted on the worst of it. You think someone's already missing? Among the rescued was Mara. Bell nodded grimly. The young teenager named targeted early in the investigation. Last she had witnessed horrors no one should ever see. Restaurant 3 hours ago. Now she stood among those rescued. Rowan's chest tightened, tears streaming down her face as she was working on it. Bell said, "You're safe." Something else," Owen said softly. He pulled a photograph hand on her shoulder and placed it. Mara nodded, voice trembling. Rowan stared at it. It showed the lighthouse entrance, the end of this. A massive iron door at the base of the tower. It's finally painted on the door was a symbol. Owen felt the weight of spiral of relentless pursuit. But unlike typical spirals, this predator was jagged, uneven edges. Survivors were safe. Like it had been drawn, and at least one thread of closure had been When was this taken? The network remains. Tonight, despite the success, the local knew the work was far from Thunder rattled the tent as the files in the hidden room indicated multiple accomplices. You need to understand safe houses, he said. And previously Blackshore doesn't just treat the lighthouse. This doesn't end with him. Rowan raised an eyebrow. The predator may treat it like it's cursed, but the network Bell leaned against the table. And we'll find every lighthouse was built in 1893 after a cargo ship crashed into Jenna nodded and killed determination in her eyes. For nearly 80 years, keepers lived there. Step by step. Families rotated left through shifts, maintaining the final note. What happened in 1984? Owen stood outside the lodge, watching the fog roll across the cliff. The last lighthouse keeper predator had been captured, he said. The immediate Rowan looked up sharply. But the memory of the storm almost identical to tonight, silent, the keeper's log, and haunting. Bell reached into the final file in the hidden chamber, pulled out a leather-bound notebook sealed photograph of a masked figure. The last entry was written by Keeper Daniel Cross. It was someone Owen didn't recognize, recovered inside the tower after he observed. Rowan carefully opened the protective sleeve. Owen's heart tightened and read the final entry. The predator may have been alone in the lodge. The light had started moving, but he had not worked entirely alone. I tried shutting it down, fog had concealed not just him, but an unseen network waiting still it dismantled. I hear footsteps above the lantern resolve hard. No one is there. We'll find them. The ocean sounds wrong tonight. Every last one. If the spiral network ends, I must not follow. The survivors will have justice. God help anyone who does. Epilogue. The fog. Rowan slowly lowered the rescued victims were gradually machinery was removed. She said. Counseling and support programs began, and no one ever found them rebuild lives stolen for years. Lightning flashed. News of the predators illuminating the lighthouse, shocking communities, and revealing the horrifying extent of the abduction network. Precise. Detective Owen Hayes and his team worked tirelessly. A deputy rushed into the tent, dismantling the remaining network and exposing hidden accomplices. Moments later, for the first time in years, stood near the base fog that had protected predators and hidden secrets began to lift. Rescue crews had gathered around something tangled in driftwood. As dawn broke over the northern woods, Bell zipped it open carefully. Owen watched the fog. Inside were textbooks, a cracked phone. He knew the scars left by the predator and his network. Lila Grain. Black he also knew that the survivors were swallowed free. She came this way. The chase was over, she said. The predator One of the rescue divers' network's heart laid bare. There's footprints leading toward the lighthouse to the woods, he said. But now, they stopped halfway up the path. It only witnessed justice. Rowan asked. The diver nodded, like she vanished mid-step. The trail. Ignoring Bell's warnings, Rowan insisted on walking the trail immediately. The storm intensified as they climbed the narrow stone path carved into the cliffside. Waves crashed violently below them, spraying cold mist high into the air. Rowan's flashlight beam bounced across the trail until she saw them. Footprints. Small, barely visible in the mud. They led straight toward the lighthouse. Then suddenly, they stopped. Not faded, not washed away. Stopped. Rowan crouched down, tracing the last visible impression in the mud. She was walking normally, she said. No signs of struggle. Bell shined his light around the area. There's nowhere to go. Cliff on one side, rock wall on the other. Rowan slowly stood. Unless she didn't leave, she said quietly. The door. They reached the lighthouse base minutes later. The iron door loomed above them, rusted and massive. Rainwater trickled down its surface, streaking the faded white paint. But the spiral symbol was fresh, bright, still dripping. Rowan touched it carefully. Paint. Still wet. Bell cursed under his breath. No one's been inside that tower since 1984, he said. Rowan pointed toward the rotating beam above them. Then someone is inside now. Thunder exploded overhead. The lighthouse light rotated, sweeping directly over them, bathing the doorway in pale yellow glow. For a brief moment, Rowan thought she saw a silhouette moving behind the cracked lantern glass far above. Watching them. The decision. Bell grabbed Rowan's arm. We wait for backup, he said firmly. Rowan stared at the iron door. Sheriff, if Lila's inside, she doesn't have time. Bell hesitated, conflict flashing across his face. Another thunderclap shook the cliffs. The lighthouse beam rotated again. Closer. Slower. Like it was tracking them. Rowan reached toward the rusted handle. Bell inhaled sharply. Detective, people who enter that lighthouse during the light cycle don't come back. Rowan tightened her grip. Then it's about time someone does. She pulled the door open. It groaned loudly, echoing into the darkness beyond. The smell hit them instantly. Salt water, rot, and something metallic, like rusted blood. Inside, a spiral staircase wound upward into darkness, illuminated only by faint, flickering reflections of the rotating beam above. Rowan stepped forward. Behind her, the lighthouse door slammed shut on its own. Bell spun around, grabbing the handle. It wouldn't budge. From somewhere deep inside the tower, a faint voice echoed downward. A girl's voice. Help me. Rowan and Bell exchanged a horrified glance. Then the light above them suddenly stopped rotating. For 3 seconds, everything went completely dark, and when the beam resumed, it was facing directly downward, shining straight at them. The beam of the lighthouse burned downward like a spotlight from another world, trapping Rowan Hale and Sheriff Marcus Bell in its pale glow. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them moved. The silence inside the tower felt unnatural, thick, suffocating, as if the walls themselves were listening. Then, from somewhere far above, the girl's voice echoed again. Please don't leave me here. Rowan's pulse hammered against her ribs. That was her, she whispered. That was Lila. Bell swallowed hard. Sound carries weird inside towers. Could be wind. Could be. That was her, Rowan repeated firmly. The beam above them resumed its slow rotation, sweeping shadows across the spiral staircase, winding upward through the tower's hollow center. The steps were rusted metal, slick with condensation and flecked with decades of salt corrosion. Rowan raised her flashlight. Only one way to find out. The spiral staircase. Each step groaned under their weight as they began climbing. The air inside the lighthouse was colder than outside, heavy with the scent of mildew and ocean decay. Their boots echoed against the hollow metal, sending hollow vibrations spiraling upward into darkness. Rowan kept her light trained ahead, but her eyes kept drifting toward the center of the staircase shaft. The inside of the tower was enormous. Old iron beams crisscrossed the hollow core, forming skeletal supports that disappeared into shadow above. Faint streaks of light flickered through broken stone panels, revealing long streaks of black residue running down the walls. Water damage? Rowan asked quietly. Belle shook his head slowly. That's not water. Rowan shined her flashlight closer. The streaks weren't uniform. They looked like something had been dragged downward repeatedly, over many years. She forced herself to keep climbing. The first landing. After 3 flights, they reached a circular landing. Old equipment rooms lined the walls, doors hanging crookedly from rusted hinges. Rowan pushed one open cautiously. Inside sat what remained of the lighthouse generator room. Or what had been the generator room. The floor was covered in stripped wires, shattered battery casings, and mechanical components removed decades ago. The metal housing where the generator once sat was hollow, empty except for thick dust and bird nests. Bell crossed his arms. County removed everything in '84, he said. Made sure nobody could ever restart the light. Rowan slowly turned in place, scanning the room. Then why does it still feel operational? Bell didn't answer. Because it did. Despite the decay, despite the absence of machinery, there was a low humming vibration pulsing faintly through the floor beneath their feet. Not loud, not mechanical, almost organic. Rowan crouched, pressing her palm against the cold metal floor. She felt it clearly now. A slow, rhythmic vibration, like a heartbeat. The walls. Bell's flashlight caught something scratched into the wall beside the doorway. Rowan stepped closer. Lines. Hundreds of them. Vertical tally marks carved deeply into the stone, stacked in uneven clusters that filled the entire wall surface. Those weren't here before, Bell muttered. Rowan counted quickly. Rows and rows of them. Far too many to be simple maintenance logs. These aren't tallies, she said quietly. They're days. Bell's jaw tightened. You're saying someone lived up here? Rowan nodded slowly. For a very long time. The keeper's quarters. They continued climbing. The storm outside roared louder as they ascended, wind howling through cracked windows and broken stone vents. The staircase narrowed slightly, forcing them closer to the inner wall. Another landing appeared above them. Bell hesitated when he saw the door there. It was different from the others. Reinforced. Locked from the outside with a heavy chain, though the padlock hung broken and twisted as if it had been torn apart by force. Rowan exchanged a glance with Bell before pushing the door open. The room inside was disturbingly preserved. This had once been the lighthouse keeper's living quarters. A narrow bed still sat against one wall, its mattress collapsed but intact. A small wooden desk stood near a shattered window, papers scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. Rowan stepped carefully inside. Everything smelled stale, untouched. Except for one thing. The bed. The blanket was folded neatly. Too neatly. Like someone had done it recently. The hidden drawer. Bell moved toward the desk, sweeping debris aside. The drawer was jammed, but after a firm tug, it slid open with a metallic screech. Inside sat several weathered notebooks tied together with twine. Rowan immediately recognized the handwriting when she opened the first one. Daniel Cross, the final lighthouse keeper. She flipped to a marked page. Day 19. The light activated again tonight. I shut down every remaining system. Still it rotates. Still it calls. I hear movement below the stairs when the beam passes over the ocean. Rowan turned another page. Day 27. I found scratches appearing on the inner walls. I did not make them. I am certain of this. Another page. Day 31. The spiral appeared today, painted on the inside of the lantern room glass. I scrubbed it away. It returned within minutes. Rowan felt her stomach tighten. Bell leaned closer as she turned to the final entry. Day 42. The voice is louder now. It says the light does not guide ships. It guides offerings. I locked the lantern room door. If someone finds this, do not let the light complete its full rotation during a storm. Rowan froze. Bell read over her shoulder. Complete rotation? He asked. Rowan looked up toward the tower ceiling where the beam continued to sweep overhead. How long is a full cycle? She asked. Bell checked his watch. Roughly every 90 seconds. Rowan's voice dropped. Then we don't have much time. The moving light. Suddenly, the beam overhead stuttered. Once. Twice. Then it slowed. The rotation dragging unnaturally, as if something heavy resisted it from above. The girl's voice echoed again. Closer this time. Help me, it's dark up here. Bell grabbed his radio. Dispatch, do you copy? Only static answered. Rowan grabbed her flashlight tighter. We need to reach the lantern room now. The upper spiral. The final staircase section was steeper, narrower, and dangerously unstable. Sections of railing had completely rusted away, leaving only open air between them and the hollow tower core. The humming vibration beneath their feet grew stronger with each step. The light overhead flickered violently now. Flash. Darkness. Flash again. Rowan's breathing became shallow. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was moving inside the tower walls alongside them, climbing with them. The lantern room door. At last, they reached the final landing. The lantern room door stood directly ahead, thick glass panels set into an iron frame, reinforced with internal locking bars. Except, the bars were bent outward. From the inside, Belle cursed softly. That's not possible. Rowan stepped closer. Through the cracked glass, she could see the enormous lighthouse lens rotating slowly, a massive multi-panel Fresnel lens that should have weighed thousands of pounds. It spun effortlessly, without gears, without motors, without sound, and inside the lantern room, someone stood near the center. A silhouette, small, still. Rowan's voice cracked. Lila? The silhouette shifted slightly. The lighthouse beam passed across the glass again, illuminating the figure clearly. It was Lila Grant, her face pale, eyes wide, but something was wrong. She wasn't looking at them. She was staring directly into the rotating lens, like she was mesmerized. The secret beneath the lens. Rowan shoved the lantern door open. The wind howled violently inside the glass chamber, swirling salt spray and dust into a chaotic storm around the rotating lens. Lila! Rowan shouted, rushing forward. The girl didn't respond. Belle grabbed her shoulder, trying to pull her away from the lens. The moment he touched her, the floor beneath the lens shifted. A hidden hatch slid open with